I will start by getting an idea of your background so I know how to deliver my lecture. How many of you work with developers? Contractors? Consultants? Oh, so it's a bias. It's consultants. Okay, so that's, you're all working with a team of professionals, right? The engineers, quantity surveyors, and the other allied professionals. Thank you very much. So I thought we were projecting, so I shared a slide earlier with them. I don't know whether you have them. You have them. So I can proceed. You are looking on your phones. Or so I don't know whether. So I'm here to talk to you about public procurement. Public procurement. Maybe let me start with a scenario. How many of you have been asked by spouse, friends, what have you? Maybe you are traveling from Takoradi to Accra and you've been asked to buy some food stuff. I want it to be as practical as possible. How many of you? Yes. And you got to the joint, you asked, you wanted to buy, let's say, plantain, pawpaw, whatever. What was your experience?
So because it's something outside my habitat or outside where I live, first of all, I try and negotiate. And then sometimes we try and bargain. And then if they have different vendors, you try moving to another vendor to see if it would influence the pricing of the person you're negotiating with.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very practical experience. So typically, the gentlemen are asked to buy these things. And then they come home, they display the goods, be it plantain, yam, whatever. And then the first reaction from the woman is that they've cheated you. Yeah, boo. And at times when they tell you how much it cost even at Agboglu, you realize that I've paid double the price. So I just brought this scenario for you to understand what procurement is about. And for that matter, public procurement. You thought you had done your best. You've negotiated the best deal and you even think that you had an upper hand with the vendor. But then when you get to the actual market and you are told that this is not the price. So this is your own money. And even at that, you have an issue. So when you are looking at dealing with public funds, that's what we call public procurement. So you're dealing with public funds. It's a different ball game. You need to tie all the knots so that nobody can at any point say that you have not achieved the best deal. Otherwise, you are tagged that you've struck a deal and you have benefited and what have you. So that is just a concept about public procurement. You also hear the word value for money, value for money. I believe all of us here, most of us have the latest iPhones or the latest Galaxy, right? And if you ask how much you invested in that phone, at least on top of my head, I know that the 16 is going for about almost 20,000. And you have bought it because it has some features that you desire to use. So you bought it at that price. And I can bet you don't use half the functions that the phone has. The little girls who always ask their big daddies to get them the latest iPhones, they have no idea of the functions that the phones possess and can do. But they have purchased at that price with the idea that they are going to have a value from it. So when you talk of value for money, that's about the concept. You invest more and you are not using it as it were. So when you have these concepts, I believe as we go along, you understand what public procurement is about. Are we still waiting for you? Okay. So I'll start by just going through good governance. The procurement concept came from the idea of good governance. We'll look at the essence of the law. Why did you even introduce the law? Years back, I don't know, those of you who have been around for some time have heard about the names. When you had names like architects in Newfall, you knew that they were earmarked for some jobs at, let's say, AGC. They were the architects there. You talk about some other architects, snake jobs are for them. It was a territorial thing. People, because of their experience and whatever, their name, they had ready job that was standing for them. They didn't have to compete. Okay. Now, there's so much competition and you have to go through a process before you win a job. So the dynamics have changed entirely. That is why we have to understand these processes to be able to get a job. Gone are the days whereby an officer can just call you. Those days, they give cheats. It's a chief executive, you call you and give you a cheat. Go and see this man. To prepare the job for you. And then those were the days that we say architect is taking 6%. He's the leader of the team, right? And then the QS will take 4%, somebody will take 3%, or what have you. And you ask yourself, percentage on what? If the thing costs 10 million and you say you are taking 6%, and somebody can design a project such that it's less than 10 million, that means you're taking less the amount. So the percentages had no basis at all. If you look at the structure of the law now, there's nothing like percentage. You have to price and get the inputs that go into executing the job, the man hours, and then the rates, and then be able to know how much is due you. You go into your remuneration and reimbursable costs, how much you are traveling, the travel time you cost them, and then you are paid for. There's nothing like percentage. So the earlier people, they just enjoy it, but now you need to compete. I would again talk about if you're in the private space, there are do's and don'ts, and if you're in the public space, the same. So if you find yourself working for a private entity, there are certain things that you need to do under public procurement. The private considerations are different. So depending on where you find yourself, you have to observe certain regulations that we also go through it. Then we also understand the structures under the procurement law. You've heard things like anti-tender committee, ETC. The Central Tender Review Committee, where I work for. You've heard about the district tender review, the regional tender reviews. All these are structures that the law observes. So if you are working for a client or agent, you have to understand how these structures work, because you have to go through them necessarily for approval before you can proceed. It's also very important to understand that. Then we talk about the almighty methods of procurement. You have heard single sourcing. It's in the news. The politicians like it very much. You've heard restricted tendering. You understand? But you ask yourself, what are the default methods? You always use the quality and cost-based selection. So these are things that you need to understand as you go along. For consultancy services, which most of you do, the default is to do expression of interest. As the first thing you see in the papers, EOI. And you have to express interests and show that you'll be able to do before you even proceed to the next stage. And I'll not bore you with how it is written, but you need to understand how you respond to it. UIs are very important because that's the first stage. And then in your case, where I would spend much time on is preparation of request for proposal documents, RFP. So you don't leave them to just the quantity surveyors to prepare. Your input is very, very critical, because you are responding to terms of reference that have been given in an RFP. And it is how responsive you are that makes you considered or qualified for the project. So I always tell the architects that it is not enough to do all the 3Ds and look, you can be the best architect. You do your projections, and then when we see your design, look, everybody loves it. But when you are marking or evaluating your proposals or tenders, that you have failed woefully to respond to the TUR, it is a strict, I'm asking for A, give me A, and not B. You can go even further than the minimum requirements and give things that are of different value, but you may not have responded to the terms of reference. So it's very important to understand how to meet requirements of RFP. Then we'll quickly touch on securities in tenders. Base security, bid bond. Performance security, performance bond. You hear all these things. Advance payment. How many of you have heard retention bonds? Retention bonds, yes. So these are all securities that you need to understand as you go along. Because you may be the lead of a project and some of these things will come up and you need to address them with your clients. Then I will quickly touch on contract variations. That's the problem in this country, almighty variations. And that is where we do the blame game. And the architects, in quotes, are the most culprits. Quickly, we introduce something at some stage, and my surveyors who are very lazy, they just say, okay, bingo, let's go. But in essence, the moment something is introduced, you need to quickly apply the cost and see the implications and advise the client before you proceed, find money for it. But I mean, the typical teams these days, it's like young Konkwa. And typically, if you study some of the projects that Get Fund has churned out, a project will start from 10 million, it ends in 20 million. Nobody talks, nobody complains. Because, let's move. But when you have serious project management considerations, these things should not happen. The moment an architect conceives of some idea, you do the value management in detail, you call value engineering, and you want to see how you can still fit in all those desired variations within the costs and within the time delivery. But we just leave it to chance and then we just price it and we get to tell the client that this will cost this. However he finds money, you don't care, but you want the project to complete. Then we'll just discuss just a bit about this Fidic things. At this stage, you don't need to understand what goes into the conditions of Fidic, but you need to understand how the books fare with most projects. I was thinking by now we have the slides. Are we on course, please? So, the academics will tell you that public procurement and good governance are like siblings. Procurement is sourcing and purchasing of goods and services for business use, or acquisition by purchase, rental, lease, hire, purchase, tenancy, franchise, or any type of work, services, and supplies. So procurement is not just about works. It spans a lot of things. If you're even going to rent some property for your office organization, you are going to procure. You understand? For business use. So you need all these things together. You call it procurement. There's something that I call the 5 R's. The 5 R's. When you observe these 5 R's in every activity you do, you would have met most of the requirements of public procurement. So you purchase or you buy it at the right time. The first one is the time. Right time. How many of you heard the story about Ghana Water years back when they said they had procured stationery for 20 years? Yes. So the time you need is when you need to. For example, if you need to put up a hostel facility for, let's say, Legon, and you need to deliver the projects in August so that September, when the school reopens, students can occupy, you are targeting to get it at the right time. So if you miss the time, there are implications. The students may have to look for elsewhere to pay money before they come. So time is of essence. So any procurement you do, make sure one of the R's is the right time. Look at the right quality. I'm sure most of you, when I tell you that I'm getting you some product from China, first idea will be like, what is the grade? we all know that quality is of essence and quality relates to value. So if you are getting the thing, it's very important to know that this is the quality you need. And the quality definitions come from my architects. How do you write your specifications? If you write it anyhow, you get the contractor give you anyhow product. And I've seen drawings that architects, I mean, they just get drawings and then the specifications are not very detailed enough. So the concept will run with it. You do a bill, and my typical young boys will do a bill, and you see that mortise lock. So I'm a contractor. I'll price anyhow, and I'll go and bring you any lock. The architects are very particular when it comes to the fittings. I don't like this lock. What did you specify? You don't like this. What was yours? I priced having this in mind because you were not specific. So it's very important that as professionals, you are very detailed and clear when you are specifying things. So the quality depends on you, the architects. The right quantity, that's the third R. The right quantity, that's in the domain of the quantity surveyors. So if you don't take off well, and instead of concrete 20 cubic and then you do 15 cubic, at the implementation stage, it will give you away. You realize that they are pouring more concrete than you would have specified in the bill. And straight away, you've fallen short and you may have to look at contingency at an early stage of a project. So the quantity is very, very important. Then the right source. Where are you sourcing the materials from? You all know the source can play a very big role, depending on where you're getting the materials from. You are architects. You have specified some door of some moisture content. I mean, we have the books, less than 17 degrees, whatever. You've specified it. And then yet you have to go to the timber market to go and look for doors that have high moisture content because it's not kiln dried, right? So the source where the contractor will bring the thing from, you have to be very particular about it. That's what will meet your specifications. And then finally, the right price. One product can sell at different prices, depending on who is selling them to you. You have some people who are very sweet talkers. You can come and sell something to double the price. Tell them, oh, this product can do this, X, Y, Z, this is the price. And before you realize, you have not done due diligence, so you are paying double for that price. So in any procurement you do, once you observe these 5 R's, you are home and dry. You are sure that you have done a very good critique of the thing and you can proceed. As they try to project, I would go according to what the slides. Okay, please come. No. Not necessarily. Just observe them and it'll be good. So I would give you an idea of how we have fared before we had the procurement law. How many of you knew about the Ghana Supply Commission? Ghana Supply Commission. Those commissions were procuring items for public entities in bulk. So you be in the office. I remember I worked in Building and Road Research Institute for 9 years, 99 to 2000 and whatever. And you'll be there, and then they'll bring deep freezers, they'll bring fridge, they'll bring, look, whether you need them or not, they have procured from the top. You know what may have happened at the top. Then they'll just supply. How do you even transport them to the regions? You have no idea. But that is how procurement was done in this country. I'm just giving an idea of where you have come from. So they would dump the products on you, whether you need them or not. I recall once upon a time, my office, for example, we had fridges 3 because they had brought, and the fridges, check, said them cry, somebody will have more than one. Then we have the National Procurement Agency, 1976. Financial Administrative Decree, Financial Administrative Regulations. All these things were things that guided procurement over a period. This is a historical antecedent. But I realized that still there were weaknesses in procurement administration. There was no comprehensive public procurement policy, lack of any legal regime, so you couldn't hold anybody accountable to anything. There was no central body with the requisite capacity and expertise to guide procurement, no clearly defined rules, no auditing function of procurement. So it was like we have a budget and we spend anyhow. You couldn't hold anybody accountable. You finish the project, churn it out at this price. I mean, you couldn't have any legal regime to hold a person, even if you find he's done something untoward. So all these things, Ministry of Finance in 1995 decided to put together what you call the POOF map. That's the Public Financial Management Program. And it also didn't address the challenges that we had identified. So in 2005, my ex-president Kufuor, who preached good governance, decided that he would implement the public procurement law. And it became operational then. And I think it's been over 10 years now. It's undergone the first amendment. Those of you know the amendment 914. 663 was the act. It's now amended to 914. That's what we are using. And we still think as practitioners, we still need a lot of areas that we need to amend. Those of you who have come under the application of the law, you would note that there are still challenges as practitioners as you go along. So that is the historical antecedents. I'm sure we'll finish this lecture end. So I said we have private practices and public practice. There's a slide that is my favorite slide. I thought by now I would have projected it. So the primary objective of public procurement is for public good. Note that. Public procurement is for public good. That is why a government would go through the procurement process and build a stadium. It's for public good. We would put up roads for public good. So the difference between that and the private procurement is that the private person is for profits. If EcoBank is doing their procurement, they are looking at generating profits for their shareholders, isn't it? They are not looking at providing something for anybody to enjoy publicly. So that it's different. So necessarily, public procurement is not looking at doing something to generate profits. As long as it gives value to the citizens, that is fine. So when you're in a private space, the considerations are different. It's purely profits. I tell this story all the time to my class. Those of you whose parents have worked in the ministry before, I don't know if you have benefited from getting a book photocopied for you when you were in the lower classes. So a typical ministry officer will come and then you give a book to somebody that, oh, go and photocopy for me, a textbook for the kids. It's done. They will come and then take A4 sheets and use it for their private stuff. It's done in the public space, typically the ministries. The toners are bought and within 3 days it's finished because everybody is running photocopies here and there. Say, you're buying there. So that is what pertains in the public space. So there's this guy who brought a proposal, and he's saying that, look, we have a lot of wastes, running copies, printing of materials, and it's not regulated. So if you look at the expenditure pattern, it's so much. So he's bringing a product whereby he would install all the copiers and printers. He would be responsible for buying the toners and the A4. Or he's going to network all the offices floor by floor. So that if Madam X issues a command to print 500 sheets, we know the job is linked to officially. So he's going to bill the ministry at the end of the month how much you have consumed. And if the ministry wants to audit it, you can easily go into the system and know that Mr. A on this day printed 5 books. Mr. B photocopied this, and it will be clear so that we can monitor our expenditure patterns. Look very good, right? And very efficient. And he's assuring you that there will be nothing like bad toner. At times the toners you put in there and then you realize that, look, it can't even photocopy. It can't last for some days because it is not the right quality. Meanwhile, there are people who are standing 5. Every 2 months, they supply some quantity of toners, whether we need it or not. Their invoices are and then they are paid. That's what pertains in the system. So this guy brought this proposal, very fine proposal. But trust me, in the public space, it was resisted. Because one, you are taking business from people who, for the past 10 years, they supply toners every 3 months, and that's their business. Somebody supplying A4 sheets, that's the business. And through the whole system, some top officers are also being given some envelopes all the time for continued job. So you can't fight that public system. But it's something that is very efficient, that a private sector procurement person will say, bingo, get it done, because for me, it's going to be very beneficial to me. So that is how the two spaces operate. This person is looking at profit, so he would take any proposal that would inure to his benefit in terms of generating profits for shareholders. But the public people, no way. Same way, those of you who know about Amtrak, you remember Amtrak, airline Amtrak. One of my friends after school was working for Care International, and he was stationed in Kumasi, so he was traveling Kumasi, Accra most of the time. So Amtrak started operating, and then anytime he came to Accra for a meeting, he would spend 2 days. He came with a driver, a car, fueled, driver, per diem, hotel bills. So he made a proposal to management and said, this monthly meetings is bringing up these costs. But I'm thinking if I go alone, cost of the air tickets, I'm able to come after the meeting because I close early and there's an evening flight. So he made a very good case, and it saved them about 2/3 of what they were paying. By the time the guy finished with management in Accra, management had approved his proposal. He got to Kumasi and there was a looter in the office. Serious red placards, because one, the drivers are not happy. They go on trek and they have factored that amount in what they earn a month. So how do you take from them? Okay. So I think all these are literature. You've gone through them. Let me just go through my slides. Okay. So just for you to appreciate private and public space. Find yourself in the public stakeholders to report to, including taxpayers. You think that this thing, I've finished the design level procurement. It has to go through somebody, has to then approve. Without those approvals, you cannot proceed. That's public procurement. And the CEO has traveled. I believe you've gone through those frustrations. The CEO has traveled. Unless he comes, nothing moves. And if you don't get it, trust me, you travel a point and then you say, I didn't know anything about it. Practitioners deal with an increased level of red tapes, okay, greater emphasis on following policy than acting transparently. So you follow policy. If the law says this, that's what we require you to do. Highly regulated and sometimes can be seen as inflexible. Public procurement is very inflexible. Do you know that under the law 64(2), you cannot even, this gentleman started by saying that he will negotiate with the vendors. Negotiations is prohibited under 64, except for services. But for goods and works, you cannot just negotiate. You can have the best intentions, but you cannot negotiate unless you seek approval from a review body, and they will give you guidelines to go and negotiate. What's the idea or the principle? If you go and sit in a room with this young lady and you say you are negotiating, you can have something cooked for you within the negotiations. So we are not allowed to just go and negotiate. That's how public procurement is. But private sector, years back, I think Barclays, now APSA, had a lot of branches. If you recall, they were churning out a lot of branches because it's a private entity. So they had a way that they partner some contractors to churn out branches plenty. Public procurement already have achieved that within that short because you need to go through processes here and there. Highly regulated and sometimes inflexible, gaining consensus rather than wielding authority tends to be the management style. Public procurement, it says building consensus. It's not enough to say that I drink with this gentleman, so consultant, I want the job to go to this gentleman. No. If you want to build authority as a CEO, you will not realize the dream. You build consensus. If you think that this person has, let people understand that he has this capacity, let the document be prepared so that it suits who you want to attract. But to build authority will not work. Limitations on negotiation, I just mentioned that you just can negotiate. But for the privates, they are more agile to respond to change quickly. Like I said, if you give a proposal to a private person and he thinks, I have profits from this, quickly he can say, management, let's implement it. Because he's able to demonstrate that there'll be profit for taxpayers. Constrained by meeting cost reduction targets, as focuses on generating profits, recognizes value and strategic benefits that procurement can bring to the organization, more flexible and open to innovations, profit-oriented, receptive to enterprising and entrepreneurial dynamics in its corporate culture, offer different contractual freedoms. How many of you know about the method of partnering? Partnering, not national competitive tender, but partnering. You can decide to partner Mrs. ABC Limited and roll out a project. It's a procurement method. The private people can decide to partner. They look at your profile, evaluate you, and think that they want to partner you and do a series of jobs as long as it brings them benefit. And they know that when they partner you, you also give them some best offer because you have continuous job. These contractual freedoms are not very open to the public people. And you ask yourself, why are they not doing things that will bring more profit? But like I said, it is for public good. They are channel project, not for profit. So that is the clear difference. So I believe if a question is asked on this, you'll be able to answer. If it's meant to be. No, it's just telling you what each of them has. It's not directly linked. So typically, this is a professional class. Questions will not be asked, what is this? What is the difference between public and private, blah, blah, blah. You've always given a scenario. That's my style. You have to demonstrate an understanding of the principles. So that's why I try to bring examples here and there. So you'll be given a typical scenario that you're in the public space, private space, and these are the challenges you have. How do you approach it? So in answering, you should now demonstrate which position you are and how you think you want to address the issue. So note that for your examinations. But both, okay.
Just trying to reconcile that with how it's meant for public good. If the whole process is very cumbersome, it's not a very efficient one.
Well, that is debatable. You wouldn't say it's not very efficient. So the emphasis is on acting transparently and making sure that nobody takes advantage of the system at a point. So that's why you need to go through all checks, processes here and there. When you go along and you look at the method of procurement and how evaluations are done, you realize that there is some level of efficiency that they try to introduce. But to the extent that they are not generating profits, you may think that it is not efficient. But generally, when you go through all the methods of procurement and the things you need to go through, you realize that they try to introduce, they get a best offer That is why you have NCT being the default method, national competitive tendering, and quality cost-based selection for services being the default. That's the first thing you have to do. If you have to go through any non-competitive method, there are rules that you also need to follow. Still trying to introduce some kind of efficiency and getting best value for money. There are times that you have gone through a process. That is why I have a problem when tenders are restricted. They put 2, 3 people together, restricted tenders, and behind closed doors, the prices are even determined. You understand? That is why even the format, like I said, there's nothing like percentage anymore. Those things you could say, percentage on what? I've gone to a tender opening and I was so disappointed. I think it's 2001. I told myself that I would never work for a district assembly because we were 4 firms and then they had opened a technical proposal and marked. So the expectation under the law is that you would announce the technical score of each of the firms, and then when you open the financial, we all know how we are fed. One, they didn't announce the technical, which was something we objected to. They didn't mind us. They were in their village and they think that they are champions, so they didn't mind us. Then we are typically, those of you who have seen these proposals before, how it's priced. You would have priced all your personnel under remuneration, the rate, blah, blah. You get an amount. You price all the reimbursable costs. You get an amount. You add your taxes, remuneration. So we had done all these things and then determined an amount that we're offering as financial proposal. Then, surprisingly, 4 of us, they mentioned the first firm and they said 6%. I think it was ASL also. 6% on what? It could be 6% on some big figure that they are quoting for the cost of the works. The next person said 6.5%. Then we give a figure. And in the room, they were all laughing as if we had deviated. And lo and behold, they ended up giving it to one of the percentages. And I told myself, I would not be evaluated by somebody who doesn't even understand what the law says. So, rest assured, there are issues of effectiveness in public procurement, but it's how you go about it. So me, from my experience, if I am evaluating a proposal on non-competitive basis, restricted tendering, single source, I go further by doing the value for or price reasonableness check. You just don't, because they have put it together. It is a seeming competition. They have put it together, 3 or 4 people, and then this is the list they evaluate, and then they will compare, and then they say this is the list. The fact that you are the least doesn't make you the best. But if it is open, and even with, if there's no adequate competition, at times people, like I'm saying, experiences will teach you. I have looked at tenders where you look at the advert and then they're advertising in the Catholic Standard, the Informer, the Pioneer. How many of you read these papers? But the law says you should advertise in a newspaper of wide national circulation. Graphic and Times are default. So if you go and advertise in Catholic Standard and you get 2 people coming and you value the 2, you can't tell me that you're getting the best offer. So experience will teach you that all these things are things that you need to look out for after a period and make the best decision. So public-privates, they all offer some competition. You are saying that the private sector can benefit from the value of competition that the public sector promotes. So much as the private sector have freedoms, competition is very key. Enable discovery of a wealth of different and diverse suppliers that a purchaser may not have known were available. So the private space can be doing business in their private space, trying to get it, but they think that there's no value out there. But when they want to open up to the world, they see that there are some items that are even on the market. These days, in the construction industry, there are a lot of items that come from other places that you don't even know, but you chance upon at a point. So when you open up, you give them the opportunity to bring to you what they also have to offer, which may be of good value. So we are advising the private space not to just restrict themselves to what they are used to, but also open up for competition. In competitive purchasing processes, vendors have incentive to put their ears. So when you are competing, you always want to put up your best because you want to win. And then benefit from the innovation also. I think I talked about this less power work in tendering, centralized printing for MMDs. I mentioned it at the last timeline. So the public sector can also adopt policies in line with the private sector procedures to promote efficiency arising out of innovations. Correct that. So less power work in tendering. How many of you have witnessed an electronic tender? Electronic tender. It's all the tenders you go for, you sit and then they announce and then electronic tender. You've witnessed one. You want to share experience?
Hello. So I want to just mention this project to see if it falls under it. The Students Experience Center, University of Ghana, the legacy project. Does it fall under it?
It's public fund.
Oh.
It was electronically open.
Yeah.
So how the process like?
Okay. So basically they gave the expression of interest to the graphics, and then we went for a sitting first meeting just for them to brief us on what they're expecting and all that. And then they came up with a new innovation. I don't know if it's new, but GIA had an electronic system where all drawings and all financial and technical was to go through that part. And then because it was a national competitive tender, everybody had a unique registration number. So it was anonymous. And then they did all the evaluation. And then when they were announcing the results, we came to a meeting again, and then they announced it. But they had done their own evaluation and then gotten the winners for the project with a unique registration number. So they didn't know who were the winners until they announced it.
So the whole essence of electronic tender is one, to churn out speedily, and two, to eliminate waste. Hello? So typically, if your firm is submitting a tender and you're supposed to submit drawings and what have you, you can tell the volume of printouts that you do. And trust me, when you submit these things, the boys who evaluate, they don't even look through the details. That's if they have people who are qualified to evaluate. So you print all these things and it's waste of everybody's time. Electronically, you just send them electronically to a point, and then people will assess them and evaluate them. So you don't need to go through this. And the advantage is even in the bills of quantities. Now, one, you lock the quantities and then the units. So everybody is supposed to enter the rates and be able to come to a figure. So when you are doing, those of you who have worked with QSs before, when they are doing evaluation, at times, those times when we're students, they will campus in a room and they will take calculator. It will be every page. So if you have a BOQ of this volume, you'll be doing the checks, arithmetic checks. So of about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and they are doing checks. But if it's Excel and then you just enter your rates. So basically you are just not even doing anything to correct anything. The figures are as they are. So one, you get it speedily, and two, you don't waste a lot of material. So these are things that we do, and we expect that professionals, you introduce them to your offices when you start practicing or you come out as practitioners. So this is what the structure under the public procurement law is. Like I said, it started at Act 663 and now amended 914. So what is a procurement entity? Ghana Water is a procurement entity. VRA is a procurement entity. To the extent that you have autonomy to spend and the law recognizes you as an agency, you are a procurement entity. Or the Minister of Finance, in consultation with PPA, by notice in a gazette, may declare any entity or a person a procurement entity. There was a time we appointed, was it a sole, whatever, Justice Apo? What was his position? He was only one person appointed, but he was declared a procurement entity, so he could purchase and spend. So if the minister consults PPA and they so think that even one person's office can be a procurement entity, you have the power to spend. You are given a budget and you spend. So that's what the procurement entity is. And then we have, beyond that, we have what we call the entity tender committee. So let's say VRA is a procurement entity, and we have a head of entity, that's the chief executive. So the structure is such that beyond the head of entity, who has powers to spend at certain threshold, when you come to the tables, you see the amounts that are earmarked for the heads. So as head of entity, he can approve procurements at certain thresholds. That's not to say that you not go through the process. You have gone through all processes, and before approval to commit into award, the head can approve because he's the head and he has been given thresholds. Beyond the head, there's the entity tender committee, which has a higher threshold. So the ETC is an establishment that also looks at all these, reviews procurement plans, ensures spending within available budgets, refers to appropriate reviews when it's above their threshold, and they say they shall meet at least once a quarter. So you can be appointed to be a member of an ETC. The ETC has a higher threshold than the head. So if a procurement goes on at VRA, they do the evaluation and the amount they're recommending is above the amount of the head, and it's within that of the ETC. The ETC should look at it and then approve or otherwise. Right? So when you are a member of an ETC, what is the expectation? Review procurement plans in accordance with the objectives of the entity, ensure spending within the limits. And people are appointed to be on ETCs. Then they go for meetings with their bags. And some of them, I mean, those who do better will have their laptops here and there. They go and sit there and they do yeah. The procurement officer will come and say, we have this list of things that we have done over the period, blah, blah, blah. They go through this one. We had 3 people tendering for, we open a tender on this date, blah, blah, blah. And we are this amount, bang, yeah, approved. You'll be signing your warrants if one day somebody sees that something was done untoward. If you are a member of an ETC, you need to bring to bear your professionalism. It's saying that review procurement plans. I think we read the budget last week. We are going to do appropriation, and then after that, entities are assigned monies. After that, they have to put together their procurement plans in public procurement. How many of you have seen procurement plans before? So a typical procurement plan will have the activity, the method you want to use, the estimated amount, all the processes. If you advertise, when you do the evaluation, all the time fields are given. And then it tells you when you start the project and when you deliver the project. So a typical plan will give you an overall view of how the project would be planned for, budgeted for, and executed. So if you see the entity's procurement plan, you can now critique. For example, they would separate them into goods, works, and services for every entity, because you are buying goods, you are procuring services, you are procuring works. So when you are an ETC member and you see, the first thing you call for is that, let's see the procurement plan that procurement has done for the agency. And then you see that they have put the purchase of a Mercedes-Benz for the CEO. They are spending, let's say, $100,000. Will you be comfortable approving that? Yes. We have shut down things like this. I mean, maybe the whole agency, the amount of budget they have been given is, let's say, 10 million. They have operational costs of, let's say, 2 million because of the day-to-day thing, buying of running the office. They have a head office building, 3 million, blah, blah. They have apportioned. And then you see that some of the expenditure items are not rational. Maybe the man is using, I think I saw some for one agency, using 50% of the total budget to buy a Land Cruiser for the head of agency. Like, seriously. So these are things that we expect you professionals, when you are on ETCs, to point out. They have put there, they are going to maybe build some 4-story, blah, 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 and they have put a cost there. Quickly, as a professional, you can have an idea of cost per square meter. What is the area they are looking at? This thing is too expensive, or this thing is something that is not adequate. So let your presence be felt as a professional. Okay? whatever they have planned to do, they may have planned based on their appreciation of issues at the entity level. But you have come as an outsider, coming to add to knowledge. So, ETC, you critique procurement plans and make inputs, and also look at the budgets. Are the budgets scientific? And I always blame my own Ministry of Finance. I think it's sad to say, but if you come for budget reviews, it's not based on any science. Then it will come and then they'll say, we need this budget for it. Then they will judge or they say, okay, I need 100 million. They say, oh, no, there's someone who will give you 40 million. Based on what? The things they have submitted to do for the year, they have not actualized them in terms of detailed planning. So but they give them the money. They put the amounts there in their procurement plan. They go on tender, 2 million for the building. The tender, the lease is 4 million. So from day one, they start the project, they can't finish. These are the practical issues. So that is where professionals have to come in, advise the ATs properly, tell them they can phase out projects, do the first phase to get a functional unit that they can use, and then the next year. So if you are in the capacity of being an ATC member, you have to make an impact. You just don't go there and business as usual. Then they wait, then they'll serve them that lunch, packed lunch, and then they'll bring the attendance sheet, they'll sign, they'll take their allowance, and they are gone. And then they'll write on their CV boldly, I'm a member of the ATC. What have you contributed? Okay. So practically, she's bringing out a point. But trust me, then you are not a professional. You see, there's what you call tact. You, everybody, it is how you present your issue professionally, how you come across. Where I work, there have been issues that you can tell they are very political. Can tell, they say, if you can see them, eyes are on you. But you present it in a way that everybody will see that you are making a point and they have to have a second look at it. Otherwise, if we all have the attitude that when you speak up, you'll be tagged, then nothing will work in this country. So it is how you say it. I have had an issue where I gave an opinion on the design and build thing. And then my bosses said, no. And people want to. Because the board chairman, sector minister or board chairman, who is the head of entity, in Ghana, we like using dysfunctional people who don't have time. Because they approve the law, they will put themselves there, and then you never get them for meetings. So now, if you are a certain CEO and you are responsible for spending, you should be the head of the procurement and not the board chair. So the board chairs were bullying the CEOs. Understand? And I think for the university, for example, now they have even slotted in the SRC president as part of the membership, which is very important because representing the student body, you can tell what the students are thinking. So, tertiary institutions, for example, now you see that we have the vice chancellor is now the chair instead of the council chair. Do you know the council chair for university? Was it Tushibu or something at the point? How can he come in? He can't make time for a meeting. So this is just for you to know the composition, and this is the amounts. So this is central. That's all the other agencies apart from the district assemblies and the municipal metropolitan. This is how it plays out. So the head of entity, this is for goods, works, and services. And when you see A and B is the categories I showed you. They have the highest spend. So if you are doing, let's say, works and above 2 million for A and B, if you're under A and B above 2 million, you have to go to central. So this should guide you if you have to advise a client. The figures are clear. The act, you can always have a copy, so you shouldn't chew this thing. So if you are in category C, that's the universities, above 1.5 million. Imagine you package on small works now, it's above 1.5 million. So you don't really do much at your level. everything, you have to come for approval. And these are things that some of us advise against that. You don't have to look at the figures. Find a way to adjust. It has self-adjustment so that if inflation goes, then otherwise you have to come back and go to parliament and amend the figures again. 1.5 million, you are putting together some kitchen where you hit 1.5 these days. There's no money. But beyond that, package. So if you are doing any little thing there, it takes time. You have to come to Central another 1 month for approval before you go back. But this is what we have to work with.
Say, please. Talking about the MMDAs. Please, you're talking about the MMDAs that they see the reviews, the other reviews, the original reviews. Imagine their threshold is, let's say, more than the 2 million. You said they no longer go to the central. What happens?
Thank you. I said they go to the originals. So this is it. So this is the category F. That's the metropolitan municipal industrial. So if you see beyond the ITC, then they go to the regional. The universities will go to central beyond their threshold. So apart from the metropolitan municipal industrial assemblies, all of them go to central. So this is a typical of the category F. That's the metropolitan municipal industrial assemblies. So beyond these figures, they go to, and the regionals also, they're like central, no limit. Maybe if that's what you want to understand.
I don't know if I heard you right. Same with the old law, they had no limits or the threshold were the same.
Okay, so I'm saying that under the Act 663, there was no categorization. We use the same figures. So these things you are seeing here, that A and B, so F, for example, okay, let's say, you are seeing that A and B, category A and B, they have amounts 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. For pests under 663, you didn't have this categorization. All agencies, including the municipal assemblies, they all use the same amount. So you can imagine, we didn't have categories. So everybody, once you exceed, let's say 1 million, you are going here. I mean, you didn't have a state whereby somebody had 1 million threshold, somebody had 2 million. No. They all had the same flat amount. They are still not getting it in. That's why we amended it. Because those who spent more didn't have space to operate, because like GMPC, for example, they had a huge spend, and the least thing, they have to come through a system and get approvals. So now they have increased the spend. So if, like those who have the biggest spend, for example, if you can do works, it's up to, works is up to how much? 15 million. Let me see. Under category A and B. Yes. So above some amount, you have to go. But if, for example, you had all of them spending, let's say, 500,000, if it were flat, the least you have to go, but they have categorized so that those who spend more have a bit of increase. That's the whole principle. No, unfortunately. It is the act. That's why I'm saying some of us advised at the time they were doing the amendment that let's have a self-adjusting factor so that as we go along, you don't need to go back to parliament to go and seek approval, because as it stands now, apart from maybe administrative caveat that the minister can give, but it is not straightforward. Once it's an act with the figures, it's fixed. So if you like that, now that the dollar is 16, if it goes about 30, these figures would be very meaningless. So you need to still go. But if you had something that adjusted it automatically, then it becomes very realistic as you use them. So some of you said you've not seen procurement plans before. Okay, no limits. No limits. Regional and central operate differently. They serve different people.
difference between the regional and the central is that the regional doesn't have a limit, but they serve a specific.
They all don't have limits, but the regional serves just the municipal, metro, and district assemblies under the local government structure. If you want to put it that way, they do under the local government structure.
Sorry. So how come the assemblies and the district, they always complain that there's no money like to do stuff when the regional, like if they have an issue, they can go to the regional and then probably they'll get like, why is it that they're always complaining of lack of maybe things, yes, to operate?
Okay, so he's asking why the districts and municipal maybe assemblies have issues of funding challenges. So you know what we call the common fund? Yes, it's just here, yes. So the common fund is supposed to give them money. Who releases the common fund? Ministry of Finance. So if Ministry of Finance is struggling and they collect revenue and they have other issues like DDEP, issues that they have to, and they prioritize that and they give them little. For example, if at time you look at the disbursement, we are in arrears for about a year. They've not even given the money for over a year. So most of the things that they have planned to do, we realize that there's no money to do them. To the extent that they just give them their operational thing. I mean, they can pay their salaries, they can buy stationery for here and there, but capital projects, they always stifle them. It is not the best. So if a government decides that, look, I'm going to be compliant, like this budget said, they are going to uncap GET Fund. It's good news for people because they had capped GET Fund. But the law is clear that GET Fund is it 2.5% or blah, blah, blah. That if you collect revenue, some percentage you go to GET Fund. But at a point, a policymaker decided to cap it. So they'll give you some limit. You can't do more. Somebody says, I'll uncap it. Now you have more funds flowing. Somebody can decide that I'll be very regular with District Assembly Common Fund. So the moment the amount hits, I'll be very regular with NHI. These are all statutory things that the law says the revenue you receive, get this amount to X, Y, Z. If we're paying religiously, there shouldn't be a problem. So as for funding challenges, it's not only the districts. All of us, we have it.
I think to follow up on what he's saying, the presentation talks about, let's say, budgeting from these entities. So if you have a budget greater than a certain amount, then it goes here. But the funding is also a different challenge on its own. So that.
I think he's explained it very well. So procurement planning is the first step. You have to get it right. There's a saying that you can't spend what you don't have. Right? You can't spend what you don't have. So if you hear the appointments, the green letters going around, CEO of this, YEAC, they're all happy. But the first thing is that after the budget appropriation, how much have you been giving as an agency? And if you are giving the amount of money as an agency, you've come for defense, they've given you some amount, appropriation is done now. Let's see, YEA, typical example, YEA, they've given you 10 million for the year. So what do they have to do? They will sit as management and look at the government objectives, the priorities. The government campaign on some issues. So they want to do this, they want to do this. So you look at all the programs you want to do, and then you now apportion amounts to the programs. And procurement plans are done for the year. You can decide to phase it, but it should be within the year for a particular phase. So when you agree on that, then the ETC, which you and I may be members by virtue of being professional nominees, you approve the procurement plans and you load it on the PPA website. So in my office, at a glance, I can see procurement plans of every government agency because they have to bring reports for review and approval. So I can see all procurement plans. And by law, we are required to load the procurement plan on their website. So every supplier or would-be provider can have an idea of what you intend to do for the year and position himself to be able to compete or supply. Yes. So procurement plans are the first thing. And like I said, what goes into procurement plan? Contract packages. So you see a typical plan, you have the package number. Then you have estimated cost of each package, the procurement method I intend to use. If you are using selected and restricted tender, say put it in there. It should be clear. Processing steps and times. You want to do expression of interests. You see, when you are doing the plan, you should understand how the process work. So, for example, you see you are doing ICT. ICT is international competitive tendering. The law says minimum is 6 weeks advert. So you can't do a procurement plan and you say ICT is the method and you put 4 weeks in the time schedule. It's 6 weeks. If you are doing NCT, say minimum 2 weeks, you put the minimum there. If you know that the amount, the estimated amount you have put there will take you to central to seek approval, you look at the time and see that by the time you take you to central that they will meet, you are giving yourself about 6 weeks to be able to get approval. It will be realistic. So that by the time you finish the plan approved and somebody is following it, you know that you are implementing it according to the plan. And we can always track. So this is what goes into a typical procurement plan. And there's something that was under 663, which they have taken out of 914, which I think was not the best. It says, a procurement entity shall not divide a procurement order into parts or lower the value of the procurement order to avoid application of the procedures under the law. So what people were doing is that if he thinks that the figure is so big, like under one package, he will have to go to central. He's trying to avoid central. So you package into small lots. Small lots so that he can get approval at the head of the entity or ETC level. These things are things we call it, there's a name for it, but it is something that we frown upon. It's not the best because at times you package it as a whole and you're able to procure it easily than to do it small, it becomes very, very cumbersome. Yes. And then to be estimated cost of the contract package. I think I mentioned this, that we don't do realistic thing. We just put some figure there and then you go on tender. So it's very important that when you are doing a procurement plan, you bring to bear your professional expertise and get a realistic idea of the budget, because that's the only way when you have money you'll be able to do. Otherwise, you put in X amount, you go and tender Y amount, you don't have money, and then the project becomes stale.
Okay, so when, let's say, from the district assembly, they come with their budget, is the regional required to give them the full amount, or do say, I'll give you 50% and then 50% to generate it with internally generated funds, for example?
I'm not too sure which region we are talking about. So budgets are given to MMDAs by the Ministry of Finance through the Common Fund or what have you. So the review bodies do not have anything to do with money. They are just looking at your evaluation reports, looking at your procurement plan and seeing that whatever you have brought before them is in the procurement plan to start with. And it has budgets. There's availability of funding, and then the processes are fair, and who you are recommending is the best fit for recommendation. Then they'll give approval for you to go and award. And mind you, let's get it straight. The review bodies, like the central, the regional, they do not give award. They give concurrent approval. They concur to the processes that the processes are fair, everything is fine. So proceed with the award. So the entities give award. People misconstrue that to be once they give the approval, it's not award. They are clearing you that they concur to your recommendations. So they are clearing you that everything is fine. You have budget, you have planned for it. The person you have recommended is the least price. He has met all recommendations, all requirements, and he's fine to go. So once they concur, then you now, based on your concurrent approval, you can now notify the man that we have secured concurrent approval. So you are being given an award. So that's where you give the award notification. It's by the entity. Entities can be via the entity that has done the procurement. Yes.
So you mentioned that each institution would have a budget, right, for the year. And if you don't have the money, you cannot spend it. So if there's a project that they want to undertake that is part of their annual, plan, and they do their procurement plan, etc., the money that comes for that particular project, is it coming from the budget that's allocated to them for the year, or there's like a whole separate fund available for things like that?
It is the money allocated to you for the year. So, like, let me go over again. YEA, by example, they have been given an amount to spend by the appropriation. So they know. And now, what finance is doing is that we are even linking it to the gift miss. You've heard about the gift miss. That's the only way to show that there's money. So once it's captured under gift miss and you put in a claim, the process will just capture it and to be paid. So gift miss has your plans and your programs. So the moment you submit a claim to Ministry of Finance, and it will have a reference number. So under this project, let's say this is the reference number they give it under gift me. So once you submit your claim and then they are entering for payment and then they enter the reference number, it picks and then controller will pay you eventually. But if it's not captured under gift me, it becomes a different ball game. And the major problem we have in this country is with variations. The road agency is a major problem. And as for that, for another day. We have seen reports whereby a professional like you and I will write that the president visited the community, and when he was going around, the Queen Mother made an appeal to him to add this stretch of road. They added it, and then we've priced it, and it's about double the cost. And I said, even if the president promised the Queen Mother, I do have to write it on paper. So after the road agencies, so you start the project, and this is how much you budgeted for, and it is. But it's something that the politicians also go and give order to do. So all the time, ministry is inundated with a lot of claims for variations. And when we go through variations, you understand what we need to look out for. So procurement method. Which one?
So the budget you give for the year, you give you whether you spend, whether you can spend it. I wasn't talking to the girl. Oh Christ. Okay, so Frimpong made a question, and we're just discussing. It was about the budget for the maybe an institution or something, and surveyor Ajimabedi was saying the whole budget given, you're giving that money for that particular thing. So if you have another project, it depends on you on how you spend your money given to.
So typically a procurement plan would have the source of funding, okay, as a field. So you see GOG, Government of Ghana, that's the budgetary thing. Some can have donor funded projects as well, the same entity. So you can tell for the source that it's not just GOG, it's also getting something from a donor source, because entities also engage other donors and have monies assigned to them. So depending on where the money is coming from, as for the donor funded, it's easy. That one, once it's a project that is going on, once you submit, it's paid and in time. So now the procurement plan. So your procurement plan should also feature in your procurement, your method should feature in the plan. So what procurement method are you using? So for me, if I'm setting a PP and you write an application to use restricted tendering, I want to look at your plan first, whether you are provided for that. It shouldn't just be something that you perceive overnight and say that you want to restrict it. It should be planned for why you're restricting it. The nature of job is such that you think that few people can do it, so you want to restrict it. Or you think time is of essence and going through a whole period of tender processes. So you should make a justification for the plan, your procurement plan, that method that you intend to use in your plan. Okay? And here it's saying that, for example, use of, okay, 44 and 45 under the law. So tendering under ICT and NCT. Okay, let me explain this carefully. As you use the law and realize that the thresholds play out a lot, there are thresholds for NCT and ICT. Okay, if you're not careful, you look at the amounts of thresholds and you think that every procurement that goes through that threshold should be ICT. That's international. But the law is saying that carefully look at 44 and 45. That is, it is only when you cannot have local competition that you use ICT. So the figures should just guide you. As it were, the donors who give us money all the time, they want us to use ICT because they want their firms to win, especially the Chinese. So why is it that you have a lot, you only apply the thresholds and then everything you open up to them? It is when you cannot have local competition that you use the figures to look at ICT. So note that very carefully. The steps and times, I believe I've made justice to them. Look at the realistic time periods that every activity will go for, and then you put them in your plan. Then general rules, procurement planning process to be fully integrated with the applicable budget processes. If it's not linked to the budget issues and there's availability of funding, too bad. Publication of annual procurement plans allows private sector to respond more effectively, so it should be open. Procurement plan is not a secret document. Hence, departments and unit programs are required to ensure the analysis and preparation of annual procurement plans for their own areas of control. So if you're a procurement officer and you are putting a plan, please go to the admin department, ask them what they need. Go to the transport department. Procurement function is coordinating. You don't sit in your office and put in anything there for them, because they will need a specification of, let's say, computers they want to buy and how much each will cost. You don't assume for them, else you are not being practical. So the department heads should be involved in getting what they want, in putting them into a procurement plan, because that will relate to the amounts that you are allocating for budget and then tendering purposes and implementation purposes. So you need to involve the heads that have control at certain areas. Some procurement heads are so powerful that they just sit and then they draw the plans, put some amount there, then they just take it ETC approved. The heads are also not mindful of what their responsibilities are. Then from day one, you start and then the thing is not realistic. Instead of buying 20 computers, you can only buy 10 because the guy didn't put the amount there. If you are head of department, be interested in what the plans will end, especially for your area of control. Two-stick tendering, I'm tempted to skip, maybe just for you to understand. So two-stick tendering is a very unique procurement method that I'm not sure any of you have used it. I have used it practically before. So it is for a situation where you are not even too sure of what you need. Okay? So let me give you an example of where I use it so that you can appreciate it better. Years back, my then minister, Dr. Kobrando IV, he introduced the tax stamp system. You know the tax stamp? Nobody has water here. Okay. So you see this. Okay, so he wanted to get revenue from alcoholic beverages as a pilot. So he first wanted to add pharmaceutical, but I said, okay, let's start with the alcoholic beverages. I'm sure the guys here, you guys, you know how alcohol, the quality and what have you. So when we say Hennessy VSOP, you know it's different from VS, right? It's different from VS. So people bring in the alcohol, and then some even bring from Togo. It's not even the authentic one. And then they find a way of paying some low duty somehow. Then they get onto the market, they display it and sell it for higher prices. I mean, it was a whole cartel. So the minister felt that, look, there's a problem and we have very loose borders. But tax stamp is being implemented in the UK and the other advanced countries. So he said, I want to implement this in Ghana. But our problem definition is so wide that I don't even know where to start from. What issue should they address? So I was thinking through, though he knows that other places they have it there. So he initially gave it to a procurement person. When I say procurement, the purchasing and supply people. The guy was at best able to come up with a goods document. And if you look at what a goods document means, is that the standard goods document is, if you look at the Incoterms, you supply, either you bring it to the stores, you bring it to insurance paid, blah, blah, all those things, and then you take your money and you go away. But the minister was looking beyond just bringing the stamp. It's not just a stamp. It's about an integral system that will address the challenge. So he met me in the lift one day, and he said, go and talk to the people. I asked them to do something. I said, okay, sir. I went to them and said, are you seeing a goods document? Then you don't understand what you're doing. So I had to take over the whole thing. So I advise them to use the two-stage system. So the two-stage system, at the first stage, you approach industry experts and tell them your problem. This is what I want to address. We have a porous border. We have influx of drains coming from here and here and here and here. We have this. How would you address this challenge to be able to get a revenue commensurate with what? So if somebody is bringing, that's why I started by asking you the types of ways. VSOP is of higher quality than VS. So even if you bring the drinks down the quality, you should pay commensurate tax. You understand? So we give them all these scenarios, and then the stamp should also be said that it has oval covert and overt features that nobody can just duplicate and then also be taking money. So we said all these things in the stage one document by telling our problem to the expert, and we identified 3 industry experts. They came around and they gave us their solutions. How do you address this, blah blah. So the two-stage tendering, we sat down, read all their solutions, okay, at the second stage. But mind you, the first stage is without price. They'll give you the technical solution without price. So the second stage, we are now able to look at what the solutions are and then now design and develop common set of requirements for them to now respond to. So it's like they have given us information for us to now ask them that now these are our problems. So now respond at the second stage, this time with price. Two-stage tender, that's basically what it is. So we're able to get the 3 aspects. We had to even make trips. One was from US, one from UK. We went to see what they had in place to understand it properly before we were able to develop the second set of documents. And that's what we are using for tax stamp now. Tax stamp has been implemented for years now. It's clear. So it is when you are not too sure of what you want, you go to aspects at the first stage. That's with 2-stage. First stage, solution, and then you now develop what you want. Ask them to now price second stage, this time with price. Restricted tendering. This is where the monkey business happens. Go and bring 2 of your friends. Then you go and bring, you call, or then you pick your documents and then you put the 3 together. Then they will stage a tender process. You come and sit there and then you get reps. They'll open. Then you evaluate. They say you are the least. Then you go for your wall letter. Isn't this what's happening? That's what's happening. So why would you restrict a tender? There are conditions under the law where you have to restrict a tender. But you ask yourself, are you doing it for the best interests of the state? There are times that it's also very important that whatever it is, you have to restrict it, because there are some tenders, when you open up, the people who will come, you can't evaluate them. Especially years back when cocoa rules started, cocoa rules, Ubiape cocoa rules, because there was money. Now, when you advertise for Get Fund projects, people don't come. Because they say Get Fund, they don't pay. So this is very important, and there are reasons why you have to use restricted tendering, but use it wisely and to the benefit of the state. I think you can read the reasons that would make you choose this method. This is where I want to spend time on. Single source. How many of you heard of some bus branding issue years back? It was under single source. All the issues you hear, procurement issues that you hear, then we all under single source. But note it once and for all. So there are conditions under which you have to use single source. If he is the only person that has is it the expertise or the franchise or whatever to do it, can single source. Before I proceed, who knows the difference between single source and sole source? Yes.
Yeah, I think with single source, there are a number of options, but you decide to go in with one. So maybe there are a lot of contractors, you decide to go with one. But sole sourcing, with sometimes it's very peculiar. Say the kind of engineering or the things you want is very peculiar. So there's only maybe in Ghana, there's only one person you can go. So you just go for that person.
That's very correct. So it is something that you cannot do away with. But under our laws, if you read the law very well, single source approval of the method is by the board of PPA. You can't take it from them. The board of PPA sets and approves requests for use of single source. And what the law has not clearly established is that beyond the approval, what should happen? For restricted tendering, beyond the approval, that's also by the board of PPA, restricted tendering. You put 2, 3 people together and then approve. Beyond that, it tells you that follow all the other procedures. So what the law is not too clear or is not explicit is that for single source, it doesn't say. But common sense should tell you that if you look at the thresholds, later I will show you the thresholds. You see the head of entity is able to approve. I think I even showed you. Head of entity is able to approve some figures. ETC, some figures. Central, some figures. And regional, some figures. Did you see PPA there? PPA is not in the schedule to approve figures. So the law is clear on the figures, threshold figures that people are authorized to approve. So it's a theft. The idea of single source is something that any government wants to use it to achieve some projects. So beyond PPA's approval, instead of going through the process to get review and approval from other people, PPA sees itself as, I'm the regulator. Why should my work be seen by some other agency? Without understanding that the rules by the review bodies are censorship rules. PPA itself, Public Procurement Authority, they are a procurement entity. They buy vehicles. They are a procurement entity themselves. So are they saying that if they grant approval for use of single source for PPA to use, they will sit down and approve the amount? You see? So it is something that it's a theft thing because they are the regulators. They think every other body under the act is under them, which is not necessarily so. The review bodies, something like Central, it oversees the whole country. And Central is not an agency that procures anything. It doesn't have a budget. It's an administrative function. So whoever procures, they are looking at the procedures. You did this, you did this. So procurement officers who understand procurement very well, which I have dealt with, beyond approval for the use of the method, they would now evaluate the proposal and seek approval under review. Let me get it again. If you understand how single source starts, the agency VRA wants to single source Mr. X for this particular thing. They write to you that give me a proposal. Give proposal and an estimated amount. So that proposal, you need to critique it. And if you understand procurement very well, you just don't even accept proposal, but you should respond to a document you have given him. That document becomes the source document that will relate into a contract document. So most of the single source that they approve anyhow does not even have a document to guide the. That's why I started by asking this bus brand, all those things. They didn't have a source document. But if you had developed a document and said that you have been approved to be single sourced, this is my tender document. I want you to respond to this, all my requirements. You bring your proposal in response to meeting my requirements. I evaluate you and I send it to the review body. Look at this. This is the best price, and then approved. From day one, once I give you the award, we have a document that we are dealing with all the conditions of contracts that guides the contracts. So that is supposed to be what's the procedure. Okay, so you are an architect. So let's take a works program. I want to single source you for the cathedral project. Okay, so I have to give you an RFP that has a BOQ, everything for you to price, bring designs, blah 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 blah. Okay, but I should, as an entity, know what I want. But the single source, because So the way they've approached it, the vendors end up selling what they are offering to the entities. If you look at the spirit of the procurement law, everything should be money from the agency. It's what I need. That's why somebody will supply some carousel belts at the airport and it's not serving well because the entity has not generated it by themselves. You should tell what you need, not what the guy. Most of the single source, and if you know how they start, somebody will go and bring some product from, let's say, Techie or something, come and talk to some CEO. Oh, I have this, he can get. Oh, okay, then let's go. A single source. So the guy is actually selling without you thinking of what you need, how to serve your agency and your objective. So that is how we get it wrong. But procurement, if you look at the spirit of the law, the power rests with the entities. You should be able to tell what you want to do. That's why you are given a budget and you have objectives as an agency and you are supposed to design your own programs and price for it and put them in plans and execute them. So if you don't know what you want, they'll give you anything that they have. Am I clear? So single source, best approach. You, the agency, should know what you want, design your document, and request beyond the approval. Now you now give it to the single source firm that respond to what I say I need. And you set all your timetables, set your time requirements. This is how I want you to deliver it. When you deliver it within this period, if you fail to deliver, these are the consequences. So a typical contender document should accompany your request so that the man will know that beyond delivering the service, these are the provisions that will guide the contract. And when it's accepted and it's validated and it's approved, you now relate it to a contract document. And from day one, if he fails to do this, and this is the clause that's going to affect him. But if you just leave it, bring a proposal, and the proposal they bring are leaves, no conditions. So he can decide to come today, you delay, you don't have anything to tie him because you have not put together any document. I hope I'm clear. I hope it's sinking well.
Hello. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to find out if this is like best practice or if it's okay. So say there's a public project, but this was so the designers know that a project like this is about to, or is in the minds of the people to do. So they approach the entity and tell them that so for a project that you want to do, here is a proposal we are thinking. And then you go through that proposal with the entity and then they guide you and then you're able to come up with that proposal. Is it okay that they single source you as a consultant for that project? Then you can now go ahead to do the...
Okay, so thank you very much. He's talking about what you call unsolicited proposals. Unsolicited. So you can also have very good ideas. That's how come some of these things happen. Very good ideas, and you can approach an entity who you think would benefit from the project. But if an agency approaches me and he wants to sell something to me, I have to go open publicly and open up to other people. Best practice. So that because somebody may be giving you a better offer with the same solution. So that's how you can develop it. But the whole thing is that you think that it's not been beneficial to you because you brought the original idea. So the issue of single source can crop up. That is if it is something that is unique to you. But if it's not unique to you and it's something that anybody can do, he has no justification. You see, the justification is done to PPA for them to approve. So me, if I'm sitting at PPA and you bring something that I think a lot of people can do, I don't see why I should approve for you for use of single source. But granted that it's unique to you and it's been approved, then you can proceed. But what I'm saying is that there has to be a document prepared with requirements that will meet the objectives of the agency so that you just don't come in and do anything you want to do because you have been single source and you are churning out some service. You have to go by terms and conditions of that delivery. Let me take this.
So please, if an entity approaches me as an architect and a single sourcing, yes, and they want me to give them a proposal for a project, and they tell me that they are going or they are seeking for support from other donor agencies, so they want me to give them a proposal, who then approves that, what's it called, proposal in the end?
Okay. I'm not too sure about this question, but let me take the opportunity and answer it this way. Especially for architects, it is a big challenge for architects. In the bit of looking for jobs, at times you commit so much resources into designs and what have you, and you never see the light of day. True or false? Yes. Because one, you are not even critical to see whether there's funding for a project. You are not critical to see whether this project is in their procurement plan. That's the first thing. For public agencies, for example, if they come, architect, when you then you start, but for him, it's not even captured in the procurement plan. The person leading the thing has not ensured that it's captured, so you will not be paid. You understand? So you have to ensure that one, the first thing is that whichever agency is giving the job, they have captured in their plan and there's budget for it. And beyond budget for it, ask yourself, has it been approved? There's a budget for it, all right. Has it been advertised? Have you gone through the public system to make sure that they have selected your firm? But you do all the work, and then for you, they were trying to use some monkey business, passing some back way, and then it never sees the light of day. That's why at times, even if leadership changes, the guy will throw it away because it didn't pass through anything. Then you think, oh my, in Jamaica. So the first point of call is to make sure that one, the project has been planned for, it has budgets, and has gone through the requisite processes to be granted approval. So if you know that you are joining firm A to do this project and firm A has won the thing on merit, at times some people will even sit somewhere, they've not gone through the process, and then the project is, let's say, 5 million, obviously above the head of entity or the ATC. It has not gone through the relevant review body for approval, so it cannot be awarded. But somebody somewhere, you flout the law and then he awards it to you. You work, you not be paid. Auditors will stop it at a point. I've seen projects whereby auditors query, where's your concurrent approval? No. Then it becomes a problem. Nobody will pay you. So food for thought. So as for doing the design, you can do it at any point, but it's your risk. If you're a professional and you think that you want to take risk and join some team, and if it, or you can talk about your terms. I want to take maximum risk, so I'll go with you if it's okay. If we win on merit, I'm taking this percentage. Otherwise, I'm putting this in there and taking my reimbursables. If you win, I take less. If so you can negotiate your terms. But point is that be very diligent and be sure that the project that you are putting so much time and effort in has plans and budget for it. Otherwise, you work, you don't see payment. I think we have done. Yes.
Thank you, sir. I followed discussions on the Bank of Ghana headquarters project, and I don't know, the procurement method that was used, to some extent, I felt it wasn't rigorous, according to me.
It's good. It was a feeling.
Yes, because I see how the figures were changing over time, and I was wondering why we couldn't be patient to detail the requirement for the project instead of other requirements cropping up later on that kept, increasing the price. And I was wondering if the design build turnkey was the best approach, because it didn't start with a BOQ. So it was like, as we were going, it kept increasing and we kept doing it.
What do you make of the final price?
The final price, I will not be able to tell.
Okay, so that's a very good concern in itself. You see, isn't it a reflection of how we are as Ghanaians? The way we plan projects. It's a reflection. The planning stage of a project is the most important thing. And yet we leave it to chance and we think that we have to hurriedly put the thing together. And it's the politicians. When they want to get something done, look, they will do anything to get it done. If we have planned the project very well, like you're saying, we wouldn't have come here. But I've been very much involved in this Bank of Ghana project. So let me just give you a gist of it.
Okay.
So the bank intended to do this project. Okay. They went to PPA for the use of restricted tender again. a number of firms together. And it's a design and build. All right. In the tender, the firm that won the least price amongst the four or so was it was 121. Okay. And I have had problems with PPA on this thing that they do. Anything we take to PPA without any scientific basis, they will say they are proving they have reduced their cost to this or slash by 5%, 10% without any merit. And if you have serious people doing serious analysis there, these things will be done on some scientific basis. So the distortion out there in the public is that PPA approved 100 million and they had 121 million. What they approve at retail tender and at tender are two different things. So for me, the 100 million it's not anything that you should even discuss. Because the amount at tender, the list was 121. That's where it starts from. That's why I started by saying that if your price are not realistic at the planning stage and you go on tender, it will show. The tender figure is what will tell you the actual price. So 121 is what we started with for the project, right? The 100 PPA approved had no basis because they sent 120, oh, so no basis. Okay, so going forward. The challenge with this thing is how hurriedly they put together. So from the time of approval, they had issues of restrictions, flying zones and height and what have you, which they made a case for. But one will ask, didn't they know this before conceiving the project? That's what I'm saying, that hurriedly they put together. So the guy designed and then they had to go on tender and then adjudicate and then pick somebody. So when they realized that, look, this project is very capital intensive. So to sink this money, why don't we address all these challenges? If you look at the face of the project, it changed substantially from the initial considerations. The floor area changed from, I think, 71,000 to 100,000. So we are talking about an entirely different thing. Okay. But one thing about procurement is that when funds has been committed to something already, you also safeguard it. You can say that by the law, you shouldn't have done this, so don't proceed. But the money is locked already. The guy has committed funds. He has started constructing. So it changed from one form to the other in terms of floor area, what have you. Then they brought it for approval. I don't know, in the public space, our approval letter was displayed a lot. We stated all the things that they should have done that they didn't do. That they should have prepared the program adequately. They should have informed us at the time they concealed the variation than committing a bit into before coming. All these things were stated. But for the price, you know, the eventual price we approved for the variation amount, it was 221, but the cost per square meter was 2096 under $2,100 per square meter. We are doing GMPC head office just on the N1. It's 3,000 plus. NPA is doing head office is 2006. The Bank of Ghana project is the least in price compared to all the projects here. Cost per square meter is the least in price. Even if you add the IT thing they added, the furniture, it's still the least. So the noise they make about, look, it will not end. As for price-wise, it's the least. The only challenge is that they should have thought through it properly without incurring the variations. But like I say, variations is something that we do in all our projects. Look, we start a project today, and in the next 2 months, we have a good reason why we should change. Look, elsewhere, you don't have that luxury of advising because you still have to work within the costs. They will not find additional budget for you. But Ghana, we just leave it to chance. And some of the reasons, look, I have seen reports where they have done projects and they have come for variations. The reason is that they failed to include plumbing and electrical fittings. Trust me. No, these are real things I read every day. On average, I read about 10 evaluation reports a day. That's the work I do. They forgot entirely to provide for electrical and plumbing. Then they will come for variations. And are you going to say you not approve? Clearly, it's true. If you look at this original document, they don't have those provisions there. And the builder cannot stand without that. And you can't say you are truncating the thing. So these are practical things. And you ask yourself, who are the people who plan these projects at the levels that they plan for? You, when they post you to as Gregor, you not go. Some agencies are sitting at district levels that they do serious projects. They commit the government to serious projects. But you want to stay in Accra. So the people who end up there are not people who have the capacity to do some of these things. So they'll plan it anyhow, anyway. And at the end of the day, we all have the issues to deal with. So trust me, it is a big challenge. It is worse even with the universities. My own K University, where we train us. They'll bring reports and you read, and they're saying that the project realized that they need additional floor, the intake. Didn't you know about the intake? What happened to projections? There are things that ordinarily you would want to throw it away at first, but what are the implications? You understand? So people do not think through when we are preparing projects. Do we really? You see, some of the things I say, you may think that they are not very important, but you need to go through the user people, go through the departments who are going to use it. What are their forecasts, figures into the future? What are the enrollment figures? These things are very important. That's why we are still coming back to value management. You know how value management is? So the clients deal with architects all the time. He will give you the brief, everything. Before the architect perceives and then comes with his sketch designs and blah, blah, before he will even bring the other people. Now, value engineering is saying that the other team members should go to the client and listen to what the client said to the architect initially, because he has some value in mind. So you are dealing with achieving the value and not whatever the functions they are put there. So you track it at the point you do value engineering midway and see that you are still operating within the cost. It's a whole mechanism that is coming up now. Otherwise, look, a country that we don't have money, we plan everything and it's double the cost, we will not get anywhere. If you go elsewhere, look, people are fired because you exceeded the cost. And you think on your feet. You have to get a solution, a product, an item that will make sure that it fits in, perform the same function, and within the same cost and the same delivery period. That is how we call serious project management. I mean, but we sit here and then everything is just anyhow. Oh, once you say this, nobody talks, and the client will buy it, and you go and find money to come and pay anyway. It doesn't happen. So, like I said, it's a reflection of our own attitude. It's not just with Bank of Ghana. People just do things and get away with murder. I mean, they just plan anything, then we'll just give the award amount. Next time it changes to this. And the things that they leave out of it at planning stage, you marvel. So the time you're planning this project, you didn't think of this. How? Then how are you a professional? Yes, lady.
So would you say that maybe because they know they can come for variation, they would intentionally leave out some things in the beginning?
I wouldn't say intentionally, but I think it's negligence. Point is that, unfortunately, some of us, because of the years of practice and experience we've built, we have always maintained that the law should cap variations under Section 87. When we get there, I'll show you. The law has no capping. I recall I went to Yoko one of the years, and then there was this gentleman, officer, who was interviewing me. He said, yes, you people, you approved the project, and it was more than 10%. So, and I said, so what about it? So write your statement. And I wrote my statement. I said, the project came before us, review, blah, 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 blah. And Section 87, 1 and 2, variations has no capping. You can, so we approved variation about 20-something%. And I think that project in question was the Achimota of Anko. It was 385%. Yes. 385, no capping. But the World Bank and the donor documents are saying that for them, if you exceed 15% package as a new project, that alone makes people sit up. Because you know that the moment you exceed 15%, you can't add up. So people are diligent, but we don't have that. That project started with two lane, and then some single lanes and some footbridges. But President Kofo said, no way, I want it four here, 2 outer lanes. So it was a presidential thing, and then the guy who did the initial thing had to now revise, blah, blah, before they realized they had started the work and they had to. So 385%. Why we all drive on it and we are happy. Every was supposed to be a single lane. Yes, that's an honest time. President Kofo said, no way. It cannot be single lane. If you have to go high, let's make it double. Now we all drive double. We overtake and we are happy. But the policy should precede the design. If the president wishes that this is what should happen, there should be a linkage between the designers. You understand? So the planning is everything. That's why planning involves stakeholders. You engage stakeholders at a point, they give you feedback, you take into consideration. By the time you come up with a final thing, you realize that it will stand the test of time. Okay? So that's our problem.
Please also do you also think that those who do the evaluation also have a part to play? Because if you are a professional sitting on the evaluation committee and a contractor brings a technical proposal omitting certain key things, aren't you supposed to call him out instead of going further to approve it?
Okay, so if you have sat on the evaluation panel before, you understand what goes into it. So the law is strict. You can't bring anything that is not a pre-disclosed requirement or criteria. You have been called on a panel. The document that went out is what you are going to use to evaluate. You should have a base document. You cannot bring any extraneous thing and say that you should have brought about it. No. So it starts from who prepares the document. Who prepared the document? I'm a contractor. You go and buy a document and you are pricing. Everybody's pricing the same document. You don't see electrical plumbing. You don't know who the client's plan. And you cannot come and add that, oh, I've not seen it, so I'm adding it. They will price you out. So that's the base document, you do it. So who prepared the document is the problem. He sets the requirement for evaluation. And like I'm saying, the law says 56.2, if a criteria is not set, you cannot use it for evaluation. So you can have the best of intention, but you cannot use it to take somebody out. It's at that level, it's about competition on a fair basis, fair and square basis. So the documentation preparation is everything. And it's not just the documentation, it starts from the design detail. So we professionals, we are the problem. Your design should be detailed enough. Your document should be above board. It should be clear as to the requirements you are asking for. The criteria you have set out should meet your objectives. I've seen a document, two documents coming from the same institution. One is a multi-story classroom block, and the other is a 6-classroom single block. And yet the requirement, you see concrete mixer and something. I think you saw concrete mixers and what have you for the multi-story, and then you saw this concrete mixers and things for the single story. So the person prepared the document, either he interchanged but that is the document that went out. So if you are doing evaluation, are you going to say that the guy who is doing the multi-story, he doesn't have this thing? It's not in there. You cannot use it.
Before these documents go out, are they examined by anyone?
Once again, we have held a view. You see, the idea of the review bodies is to get a sense of the challenges and feed the regulator, that's PPA. So what we are saying is that in the World Bank system, we call something prior review. You hear no objection. The document, before it goes out, there is always prior review and no objection that this document is above board, it can go out. Our system, somebody sitting at Asankrego Assembly, the document is prepared and he has sold the documents already. By the time you see the document, it's gone out. The bills are not up to standard. The standard method of measurement is not used, but he's an agency, he has done it, it's gone out, he sold it, people have bought it, they have open tender, they are going to do their work. Are you going to stop it? So this is our challenge, capacity issue. Capacity is the issue. The assemblies is worse. That is why I'm sure they've categorized them and give them a bit of lower threshold. And the good thing about the regional reviews that feed the assemblies is that they have now made a membership 7 and 4 are professionals. Government nominates 3 and 4 are professionals. They wanted to introduce more professionalism there because they realized that the capacity is a bit low. So you can tell that the challenges are with us as professionals. Diligence, adequate preparation. And the architects, I even have an issue with you. You guys don't take interest in the work the other people do. You know, the quantity surveyor will try to understand the drawings, the engineering drawings, blah, 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 because if you don't understand them, you cannot even relate them into bills. But architects, some of them are straight jackets. It's about the design. But I'm telling you, that's what I said about saying you can have the best designs, but you can never see a job. You have to have interest in what goes into securing a job, what goes into implementing a job. These days, it's turned into a management issue. And it's even gone beyond that for all of us. It's not just being good technically. How your social network also brings you job. How many of you close from work and go home straight? You think they made them in pay once? It's the worst thing you can do to yourself as a professional. Most of the jobs are discussed at big hotels. Golden Tulip, is it Lancaster? Look, in the evening when you see people parking cars and going to see that, they are discussing big jobs. That's where the opportunity. Look, the jobs are given out before they even appear in the papers. So you'll be wasting your time. At best, belong to old student association, church groups, because somebody would be that person out there, but you can get a job and through association, you can bring you on board. Otherwise, look, you can be the best. People at best come and hire you and pay you pittance. Me, I'll go for a job if I'm getting 100,000 and I pay 20,000. You do the job anyway. So who benefits? But you are the professional. These days you don't need to do a lot, but how you manage your social network, very, very important. Okay. Oh, we are still back to square one. So I think the next. So methods of procuring consultants. The default is the quality and cost-based selection. That you are very conversant with. They will mark you technically, and then they will combine your financial score, and then the best person becomes the winner. So the document is clear. They will tell you quality and costs. And then there are times that they use the quality-based selection. You know when you have to use that? When the job is such complex of a nature that it's not about costs, it's about competence. So they'll use a quality-based selection. And that one, when they get the best quality person, they'll negotiate your price with you. Once you accept the price, you are the person to go with. If you don't accept it, they go to the next person. So when you see quality-based selection, put in your best foot. Quality and costs can be funny. You all have close technical, but then somebody can undercut you. Then we have other little ones that, as you go along, you may also come into contact with. You have the fixed budgets, you have the least costs. You've seen all those. Yeah, literature, I can read them.
Okay, sir. So in the explosion for the trucks that were transporting explosives to the mines that destroyed the road, in an emergency case like that, what type of procedure is used to select a contractor? Or
you see explosives, you are transporting explosives.
Yeah, so we had an incident where a truck carrying explosives to a mines exploded and destroyed the road and surrounding community.
Okay, so the road had to be reinstated.
Yes.
Okay. So, like I said, you can't do away with single sourcing. Okay? And there are certain things within the emergency where, for example, the main pipelines to the whole Dansoman community has a problem. Dansoman has no water. You cannot say you're going to advertise or do X, Y, Z. Practically, you get somebody to get it done. But as the person is doing the work, you are quickly putting together documentation so that you can address everything that he has done. And then under the law, we have what we call ratification under Section 90. So you can go to PPA and with all the records, ratify approval to have single source him to have carried out the assignment. So these things are things that you can easily address because as and when they happen, they have to be addressed. Like I said, rig idle time is millions of cedis. So an oil rig being idle for some time is money. So it's not something that we are waiting for head office to take a decision and we are waiting. You take a decision and go by it. That's why in project management, you give some management level people some authority limits that they can take a decision beyond some limits, commit some amounts. Because otherwise, you can't wait for the top to come before you take a decision. So we have fixed budgets approved by people. They have single source consultants also. If you have a follow-up assignment, you can single source a consultant. Whether we have done some work already and you need continuity, it can be a basis to single source you. Yes. For continuity, let's say a contractor did some work and then the work was abandoned for some time and he has his equipment, everything there, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it may be yes, but if the same person is there because he's mobilized already, continuity of work. I mean, those are reasons that consistent with section 40, you can write to PPA. Yes, yes. So I'm sure the rest, there are things you can read. Expression of interests, I said, I'll just mention them, but focus more on the proposal submission. So UOIs are the first stage. They are the default method. When you see the UOI, at that stage, you don't need to put together very detailed documentation. You are just expressing interest. So you are showing how you demonstrate capacity that you can carry out this assignment. You have done so before, so you are putting your profile work that you have done before, the years you did it, the years of experience you have, the personal that just indicative to express interest. And then once you are selected, and expression of interest, you don't have any formal opinion or so. It's just to see who have expressed interest and who are qualified to. Once you pass that stage, then you come to the proposal proper, and that's where the actual business is. So you may read what goes into writing expression of interest, because you may lead a team and the clients will say, place an advert for UI for me. So I don't need to go and call a QS to come and do for you. You should be able to do it. So the slides will tell you what goes into the expression of interest. Disclose the source of funding, the location of the job. This is very important. Me, like I said, I will not work for a digital assembly again in my life. So if I see the advert, UI and assembly, I'll not even read it. I'll not waste my time. I'm sure you also have your preferences. And when I know the source of funding and I know it's, let's say, common fund, I'll not do it. So the information is very important in an EOI advert. It separates the boys from the men. Some people would want to do it, some people don't want to do it. So it's very important what goes into the EOI. It's very important if you're drafting it. So I would go into responding to preparation of request proposal document. This is a typical QS thing, but just appreciate it. You need to appreciate the document itself, the RFP, the sections, what they mean, to be able to respond to it. So we have sections that we call it sacrosanct. You can't change them. And we have sections that you can edit them to suit what you want. So when you pick a typical document, you know where you are looking at. The sections that you can amend them, they are of no use to you because sanity. But the ones that they have changed is where they have asked you to submit information or requirements. So you look at the evaluation criteria, and it will typically be technical capability and solution approach, managerial and staff capability. You are responding to a request for proposal document. And services assignment is a qualification of staff that matters. And people will do tedious work and put in the staff without even asking them to sign the CVs. An unsigned CV is as good as useless. It doesn't show commitment. Any document I've prepared, I even go beyond just signing. I want you to sign a declaration of evidence of availability. Something we take for granted. But people just pick people's CVs. I've done evaluations and I see the same man's name in 2 documents because he has 2 friends who have all taken his CV. And by the rules, those firms should be taken out. Yes, it can easily be grounds for taking out. So when I ask that you give me a declaration of availability of the staff, I can be your friend. We have the best of times together. I can give you my CV to turn up for a job. But when you ask me to commit and sign that I'll be available, I will not do it because I know I'm not available. So it tells the actual availability of people to do the job. You give a job out there, and when it comes to implementation, you can't find the people that they put in there. So they just put in there to win the job. I also ask for professional affiliation. We should weed out our own colleagues who don't want to join this profession. They're out there working anyway. You can't do anything about it. But if you ask that he should be a member of a professional institution and he doesn't have it, he will score low. I always give marks for innovation. also very critical. It shouldn't just be flat. Somebody should come with some innovative ideas as to how you want to approach the thing. So that marks is allocated for innovation. We always give marks for comments on the TOR. It is very true that no clients can write an exhaustive TOR. And the person responding can easily give you something that you have not even thought of. So when you give them opportunity to give comments on the TORs and facility provided, they're able to bring things that you may have missed, and it makes them stand tall. So it's something that we also mark for. Technical capability and solution approach also very important. The difference between two proposals is how you approach to do the work. And I want you to relate it to the best approach will give you the most cost effective. Let me give you an example. So we are doing a project as Asankregwa. Okay. And I have two proposals. One is telling me that he would be at the head office in Accra and he will visit the site every month with a team of professionals. So every month, a car will go, they will spend, let's say, 3 days, they will rent accommodation, they will pay the hotel bills, feeding allowance, per diem for the staff who will go, fuel in and out, and then come back. That is his approach to do the assignment. Somebody is saying that, okay, I would go and pitch a camp at Asankregwa, and I'll house my staff there. They are there 24/7. I'm paying them for the month because I've accommodated them. I'm not paying them per diem. They are not traveling, blah, blah, blah. They are just on the site working. You know that these proposals are different and you price them differently, right? So depending on the approach, your financial figures are different. That is what separates. So you have to take interest in the approach to a particular assignment because that will relate to how competitive you'll be with the cost. And technicals always relate to financials. People think that, oh, technical proposal, we are trade, we are pass it, but it has to relate. That's why when I'm evaluating financial proposals, at times I bring to bear some omissions that you have made in your, because if you say you do X, Y, Z, I have not priced for, I have to clarify with you how you have catered for that. Otherwise, you give him the job and then he says that I didn't do this, so I'm not going to do it. So there's a direct relation between technical and financial proposals, and you need to bridge that gap during evaluation. So all I'm saying is that as professionals, take interest in the approach and methodology very keenly because that is what will make you competitive. And these days with IT, you can do a lot even sitting somewhere and getting the job done. Physical appearances may not necessarily do the job. It would be more costly executing the job when you have to be there physically. So the takeaway is that it's technical and financial related, and be very practical in your approach so that you have the best offer for a client. We have seen proposals that have scored about the same technical in the 80s, but then one is half the other. Because of the approach the other adopted. You have a liaison person who will be liaising between the head office and this, he gets things faster. Look, there's a lot of approaches that would enhance the work done just doing the regular thing. The regular thing we know is that, oh, now you took a call, the team will go 3 days, you are here. I mean, most of them are not effective because it's cost to the client, and the client wants to pay less. When you are responding to RFPs, you have got the document already. So it says, read the RFP document. You'll be amazed how many people miss this step. Read carefully, end to end. Make notes, pay attention to requirements, requested formats, weighted evaluation systems, submission schedules, etc. Do nothing further until the step is completed. The practice is that the firms buy the RFP, and then 1 week to the submission deadline, they will now strip the office staff. Go and do. That's why people even miss tender security before they submit. So immediately you buy it, look at your staff, look at them. Somebody should read. You should extract all the requirements, all the formats you're supposed to follow. You read them, and then don't do anything. Read and get the details, summary. Okay. Select key members of your team. Say, who are you starting? who are on the starting line, recognize that you can always seek for additions. Okay, so select key lead persons for skills and temperament according to the required client relationship. This point, you may think that it's something that you skip over, but even in selecting your team, look at who the client is. I've had somebody who led a team from one of the road agencies, and the client had to sack him. Temperament was bad, and the client you are relating to is a client that you just don't need anybody. So even in selecting the team, you have to be very, very critical. Somebody may be the best person, but he's not able to communicate properly. And you meet a CEO who is very internationally oriented and he will just dismiss you. You think that, look, you can't do the job. More, you can do it. Says pay particular attention to nice to have versus essential requirements. Essential requirements are key. Nice to have, we just embellish the whole thing. You see, architect, design, nice design, but you're not scoring 1 mark from it. It's nice to have, but does it meet the minimum requirements? Very key. You should understand the motives behind the particular competition that you are entering into. Maybe there's a shift in policy of the clients, new leadership structures in place. So in addressing, you have to understand the client properly. Something that you give to get funding is not the same thing that you give to Ministry of Education. Every client has his or her objectives. So you have to look at it properly and then you develop your strategy to meet that. At a point, you have to decide how important is it to win the competition. So do you just want to win it or you want to make profits? It's a decision that you have to take at a point. There are some jobs that you just want to keep your staff busy. So just break even and get a job and keep your office running. There's some job too, you don't really, if it doesn't come, so you put your, and then you price it that when you make profits. So you don't really care if you lose it. But some jobs, then you have to win at all costs. So all these considerations come to play when you are putting together your proposal. Identify your weakness. Be aware of your weakness and fire, because when you read the requirement, you realize that I do a mini B. And then you see how best you want to make up. Write, collate, and read, repeat. Okay. Once thoughts are put together, start drafting proposal. Collect every relevant piece of content, placing into the required format. Grab content that needs adapting and make it fit. Cross-referencing is also very important. You see, when somebody reads your proposal, the executive summary, me, after reading it, I have an idea of how your proposal will fare. It tells everything about what you are presenting. So if I see mistakes, your proposal, even the executive summary, tenses, I'm prejudiced. It's like marking exam scripts. Those who fail make the examiners work more difficult than those who pass. You struggle to even read, put it together, realize that the guy is failing, but he's worrying you. Eventually you fail. Submission, on time submission is everything. And don't take things for granted. Those of you who have stayed in, no, you all, most of you attended UST, so you know Edum very well. There was a submission of proposal at the then, it was called, one of the banks, is it? They had one at the Unicorn and one at the that Prempeh statute, or no, the Confonoche statute. Is it HFC? There were two branches, all at Edum. So the documents said submission 10 a.m. on Tuesday, this date, at this bank, Edum branch. So, and you know how tenders are submitted last minute all the time. I don't know why. So this guy was coming in traffic. So he got to the Unicorn house and then he got out from the car. They don't have to find somewhere to park. He rushed to that branch and they said, no, it's not the branch up there. What is the lesson here? By the time he ran there, it was 5 minutes late. So clarity in documents. That is why we always say that this building, described the building, 3rd floor, room number, this exact. There were 2 branches in the same Edum, and that happened. So why would you even wait for last minute? But that is tenders for you. So possibly visit project proposed sites and capture everything. look, when I'm reading the proposal and I realize that, hey, the guy has been to the site, he has captured all of the problems in the site, I know that you are relating to the job. Plenty people sit in Accra and then tender and apply for a job without even seeing where the project is. True or false? So how can you give me a good proposal? I have always put in my tender documents that I need a site visit and assessment report signed. So you have to go to the site and get me an idea of how. You see, the moment you go to the site and you see the difficulty in assessing the site, the challenges, how the site slopes, it gives you an idea of how you're going to give me a proposal. So it's something that I always ask. Any document I've prepared, I put in there. I don't prepare a document and I leave it to chance that I want this architect of this year. Look, I'll go further and ask questions. If I'm asking for experience, I'll not take your word. I'll ask you, there's an envelope that I put in a tender, that the tender, the client you say you have worked for, he should write a recommendation and address the evaluation panel. And you post it to the evaluation panel. You see, we have the flexibility to make these requirements very, very, very aligned to what you need. But we just leave it to chance. We just take the old document and then we just put it out there. Anybody can pass through. The moment he passes and then he's winning, then you are now finding a way to take him out. No way. So when I prepare a document and it goes out there, you realize that those who actually are able to respond to are people who have the muscle to respond to. You say you have equipment. Is it enough to just bench? You see a sheet of paper, this concrete mixer, this tipper track, number this, owned. This paperwork. I want to see the DVLA documentation in your name. The ones you say you hire, if you're going to hire them, let me get a letter from the hiring company that the equipment will be available at the time of execution of the job. So if somebody buys a document and realizes that he cannot proceed, because it's not business as usual, it's no joke. That's why in RFP for services, you want to tease out the detailed task assigned to the professional that you say has done so before. It's not enough to, look, somebody was just holding the bag, following the boss, and then yet you say that I took part in this project. What did you do? I will only assess you from the detailed task assigned to you. That's how we evaluate it. So if you want to do very, very good work, you put in a proposal saying that it will be above board. Anybody sees, oh, this guy has done it, and he will, because you are entrusting the whole project in his care. So you don't take chances. Most of the projects that we see abandoned here is because of lack of due diligence. We just throw it out there, people get a job, and then they go to sleep. After the first check, especially when they have gone to see the big men, they can call the bluff, because you call him for site meeting, he will tell you when he will come. Not on my project. The first site meeting, you make it clear that this is how we are going to proceed. The first site meeting, you take charge. And you let them know that these are the do's and don'ts. You let them know the things that will attract penalties. And from day one, you start. When you send a signal early, everybody sets up. Make it friendly. The person, look, you tell you that this guy didn't come, and then you give an excuse. Oh, submit the drawings next time, and he's delaying. For good, effective project management, writing is everything. Standard templates. The moment you default on one submission, the letter comes and it's copied the client. So the man knows that, look, there is no monkey business here. But how many of us, we take them as, oh, they are friends. So, oh, we'll talk to him. Oh, let's talk to him. Oh, on Friday, next week, the when the architect comes and says, oh, I desire change, bang, the meeting, by this day, KWS, submit the cost implication, let the client be advised. Bang. You send reminders. Before the deadline, you send reminders, expecting this, blah, blah, blah. Everybody sets up. So we can do it if we want to do it as professionals. I think it's 12:20. You want to break for a while? I want to do the variations with you. It's very key for me. Or I don't know your timetable, but I can see some eyes closing. So if you want to stretch for a while and then we come back to finish up. All right, thank you. So let's break for some few minutes and come back. So welcome back. Unfortunately, you are unable to project, so I would do with my So quickly discuss securities in tenders and then do the variations. How many of you understand what you call tender security? See, what's on your mind? That's it.
Okay, so what I understand about tender security is when you are applying for a tender or when you are submitting for a tender, you add the tender security or the bid security to from your bank to show that you are able to not to prevent you from pulling out, basically. So it's to show that you are competent and you are not going to pull out. Because if you pull out, they can go for the money from your bank or institution of payment.
Any other? Any other apart from the pullout? Okay. So I always want to put it in a way that I'll break it down properly. Before you go out on tender to look for somebody to provide a service for you, you would have spent money putting documentation together, designs, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So you have spent some money. So if you do all these things and then you go out there and then people come buy the tender document, they give you the figures, and then by the time you have a rating, they say, I'm not interested. What has happened to you? You have lost money. Well, you would have gone straight, but to go through all this, means you want the best offer. So if people come and then you don't tie them, and then they just come, waste your time, and then go away, you incur more cost. So the idea is that there are 4 conditions of forfeiture. One is the pullout, you said. 4 conditions. So that you don't withdraw your tender during the adjudication period. 2 is that you don't, if you've been determined to have incurred some corrections, arithmetic, whatever, and you fail to stand by, because that's what figures you are giving up. The third is that if you are given an award notification and you fail to submit a performance, and then the fourth is that you also fail to sign a contract. So the idea of determining the amount is what I need to understand clearly. 3 of us sitting here, you quoted 1 million, 1.1, 1.2. Those are the figures you saw at tender. So if she, being the list, decides that she will pull out, I'm forced to go to the second, 1.1. So how much have I incurred extra? 100,000. So the idea of determining the tender security amount is always the possible difference between a list and the next list in terms of price. So looking at the project under question, let's say you're doing a 6 classroom block. 6 classroom, maybe a cost, yeah, 800,000, 900,000. If you look at, it's supposed to be from a trend, typically what you have studied, the possible difference between the list and the next is, let's say, about 50,000, even on that project. That's how you fix the amount. And I always advise my quantity surveyors not to fix tender security at a percentage. You know why? It's not advisable. The people who prepare the standard tender documentation for us, it's standard. So they put in the 2%, just to give an idea that for a typical project, there could be 2% variation between the list and the next list. But then we run with it, and tender security, 2%. You know what that does to us? Now the bankers are seeing through, and then they are making money off us. Myself and her, we are competitors. We all do a tender security at EcoBank. So I get an insider person there. How much did she pay? The moment I know how much she paid, I know her figure. She paid 2% of her figure. You can undercut her. So tender security is always good to put a sum. And the sum should be a reflection of the possible difference between one and the next, depending on the job you are looking at. If it's a very big job, at times the difference is very big. So you look at that amount as a tender security. So bottom line, so that you don't withdraw, you sign a performance, you bring a performance, and then you sign a contract, and then you also accept your corrections. 4 conditions of forfeiture, and they are strictly confirmed from what you submit as accepted or otherwise. So that is a sense of tender security. Am I clear? Difference between the bond and the guarantee, tender bond, tender guarantee. I want you to understand it very well.
My understanding is the bond is from insurance and then guarantees from the bank.
Beyond that,
That's my basic.
but the source should make a difference.
Yeah, so okay. So the difference is with a bank, you can just, if the conditions are defaulted, let's say, you can go to the bank and retrieve the money. Insurance it's a longer process because they'll
The
do
black
some
car
investigation,
issue.
yes, before they.
Yes, so we call it on demand, on call. So for the bank, you just need to notify them, they'll pay your money. And insurance is the usual, they will try to get somebody to come and complete the job. They will not pay outright. So that's why people want to say that I want a guarantee from a bank so that there's no hula baloo, blah, blah, blah. But practically, from your experience, you think that tender security is very relevant? So the whole idea is that you don't get anybody working on the job so that you don't incur that. How many? I worked with BRI for 9 years, research, and we worked very well on this issue. How many firms in Ghana here who will win a job through the process and will say that I will not take the job? Look, in the outside jurisdiction, somebody can tender for a job, he's at it. He just weigh his options and see he has 2-3 jobs, he can't do it, and he write to you and forfeit it. That's no big deal. But Ghana here, how many people? The default rate is 0. So we give the banks, I tell my quantity surveyors all the time, we sit in our offices and then we will specify tender security, this from a bank. We just rush to them, we pay the money to them, they are making money off us. When we are doing our seminars and we call them to help us, they don't even help us. But we are just giving them money for free. And they call that money free money, this security money. The insurance people, it's for free. They never get that default rate somebody has. When a judge says, I don't like the job anymore, so they are coming to the bank. No. So that the performance and advance guarantees that, but tender security, it hardly happens. So that's why in this jurisdiction, we are now asking for tender securing declaration. Have you heard of that? Yes, the bank, the donors are now asking for that. So most of my documents, that's what I use. Tender securing declaration. That is more punitive. You are declaring that should you forfeit any of these 4 conditions, or should you pull out, you should be blacklisted for maybe the next 5 years for that client. That is more punitive. But as to paying this amount, so why do we have to specify in our documents and enrich some agencies, pay money to them all the time, 2%, 2%? Practical. Let's be realistic. Tender securing declaration. Tender securing declaration. So when you declare, there's a standard format you fill and you sign. So the moment you fail, then it is kept on you. So for the next number of years that is declared in there, you cannot tender for a job there. Other than dashing money to the insurance firms and the banks. It's free money. They have departments that they do it fast, then they take their money. And when people are going to tender for jobs, they will pay quickly because it's a requirement. You have to go and pay. You pay and then seek, I brought my tender security. And even these days, what is even happening is that some of them, they make mistakes in the tender security just to give advantage to some other competitors. It's sad. I've witnessed, I think I chaired some evaluation on Royal Electrification project. Tender security from the same bank, from the same branch. They changed the wording for one of them and then he didn't meet the requirements. Insider trading. So we don't enrich somebody. Let's note it. The next is the performance security. As for that one, we all know that it's for performance. So that one too, we go and then we pay money for it. And then what happens? We just leave it to chance. The money is locked with them, right? Who knows how that should be treated? 10% on bank, 30% on insurance. Isn't it standard in the document? What should guide the amounts you have to lock in performance? Who can help me? So the standard way of our contracts is on the deferred payment system. When I say deferred payment system, you understand? So you work, it's valued and paid. Next certificate, you work, you understand? So the performance amount should be an amount that you would have, or the client would have paid that you have not worked. You get a scenario. So it's a typical certification period, like amount that the client is likely to have paid that. So if the client pays you and you don't put him back, that amount is what at a point you should be able to get it if you default. Okay. And in essence, when you have paid money for that amount and you execute the work over a period, then to the end, then you should close out your tender, or your performance. Because you would have had little to do, but people just leave it at. So for very big jobs, they reduce the amount as you go along. The more you're performing, the more there's that less risk that you not finish up. But we just leave it to chance. So those who apply them, they just leave it to chance and then they will keep it. And for some of the banks in this country are killing us. Before you even take some of these instruments, they will lock your money and then they'll lock your property of that value so that, they don't take any risk. And more so when they have worked with you as a contractor or supplier for a long period that you have never defaulted, there are times they should even write it off because you have worked 20 years, you always do your performance there, and you have not defaulted. What is the risk again? So we don't look at these practical issues. It's just a matter of taking money off us, and we're also happy to pay. We don't have negotiating power. Maybe not about 20 years. Look, then I'll go to the next person. Advance payments. It is the most important because of the way we run our companies here. One man business. The man dies, he dies with the company. At best, he will leave it with the daughter or the son. So the moment you give him interest-free money like advance payment and he dies, there'll be a problem. So as for that, the law, the Financial Management Regulations Act says that advance payments should not be more than 15% and it should be from a bank, not an insurance. We don't accept insurance anymore under the Financial Management Regulations. So advance payments is strictly bank. And we need our money and no more than 15%. Yes, I see my own kinds of ways. Most of them, some of them will prepare documents and they put 30% there. I say these people, interest-free loan, 30%. The guy gets the money, the next moment, the brand new car lands. And the next wife is in the offing. So as for that, you don't joke with it. It's interest-free loan. And if you are giving, it's supposed to be a guarantee from a bank and no more than 15%. I know the relevance. Why would it be important for a client to pay advance mobilization? Advise a client that either he should put in there or not, whether he should pay advance mobilization for this particular job. You are the lead of a project. The client wants advice. Do I pay advance or I shouldn't? Hey, this is practical. You have a job, a client has worked to you. Advise me. Will you keep quiet? Why would you pay advance mobilization? Performance, you all know, to address issues of non-performance or delivery risk, but advance payment. You all know the volatile market in which we find ourselves. So when I give you money, I expect you to lock the prices with the money I've given you. So when I pay advance, until that money is deducted, I don't pay any fluctuation on them. So I lock up prices. It's for you to be able to procure most of the materials in advance and do my work for me so that I don't incur those escalations that would occur. So it's very important at times to pay advance, as well when you realize that you need to procure things. And in serious project management of some projects, they even go further by procuring items that are coming from the offshore items. Procure early so that it comes early, and also you also lock up the prices. You advise the client on those steps. Now, retention guarantee. How many of you know about it? I think somebody raised their hand earlier on. Retention guarantee.
So for the retention guarantee, it is when the contractor requests that the retention be given back to him. So you go to the bank and then get a guarantee and give it to the client or the employer so that they will not withhold the retention, but they will leave it with you so that the bond will be that which stays with them. You have more money for your mobilization in the, you have more money for the project.
Okay, so that's a good attempt. So this principle of retention is something that it's a 50-50 thing. I work. You retain 10% of my money from beginning. It's my money. I've worked for it. If you do look at typical valuation, all the work I've done, look at the rate, everything, and it comes to, let's say, 500,000. It's money due me. You come to the summary, and according to the contract terms, you retain 10%. 10% until it gets to an amount that you limit it to no more than 5% of the contract amount. So you retain that amount of money. It's my money. Emphasis. And then you retain it as a client. You have a 2-year project. So you keep that money from beginning of the project to the limit and till the end of the project. And the conditions say that when I reach practical completion, you give me half of my own money I've kept. Half. And 6 months, depending on the project, it could be 1 year. 6 months, when there have not been any identified defects, they release the other half for me. Okay. So imagine 2 years ago, my own money. I had the opportunity to put it in a bank. 2 years ago, when you started deducting, instead of you keeping it, it's my money because it's not yours. I had the opportunity to put it in a bank. And over the 2 years, how much it would have accrued. And at the end of the period, the half you give me I could get it then. What is the essence of the whole retention amount? To be able to remedy defects within that period. So if 2 years, you keep the money and the value becomes less, it may not even be able to undertake the defective work when they occur. So one school of thought is saying that, look, this money you are keeping it for me. Let's agree to put it in an escrow account. Because it's my money, you shouldn't keep it. And then at the end of the day, it will yield a very realistic figure that will be able to do the work. Isn't it fair? Because I've worked for the money. It is money that I have worked for. It's my money. And you are keeping it. And it will have devalued at the end of the period and may not be able to do the work. Now, at the practical completion period, as for that, I've practically completed, except that some defects may occur that you and I don't know. So that time to give my money to, I say, you're giving me half. So all we are saying is that at the practical completion day, give me all my money. I'll guarantee. I'll bring you a guarantee so that if something happens, I'll do it. And if I don't do the surety will do it. So the guarantee is to make sure that you get all your money at practical completion without waiting for taking half, then waiting for another 6 months to take the other half. At the beginning of the project, they start taking you. They will give you half of that total they have taken at practical completion, and the other half a month, 6 months later. No. We take it at when the practical completion is done. That's why I started by explaining that school of thought is saying that that money you have even taken from beginning, no, make it some independent funds that will accrue. Otherwise, so it actually affects your cash flow and also benefits the client more because the client is keeping your money. I had opportunity to apply this 1999 when Utunfor brought the first World Bank project as a king. That's the first time World Bank gave a facility to a king. And they realized that governments could come and go, but the institution of the Asantema was very stable. So they gave Utunfor that time some millions of dollars, and they called it Promoting Partnerships with Traditional Authorities Project. I happened to be the project quantity surveyor. That was my first experience as a full-time quantity surveyor on a project. 40 sites in Ashanti region. I paid everybody their attention. I actualized it because I felt, look, so I said, everybody go and bring it. And my director said, I mean, why you keep the money? So I did that. So those are the things we learn. Let's actualize them. Everybody had the money. And then I think we just had I think one or two people who had issues with defects, but at least the shorties came in to remedy them. So these are things that you learn, just not for the boost, but yes, it's just because you have to be fair as consultants. You are fair arbiters. It's somebody's money. Why do you keep it? Let him have access to it. How many of you have issued professional indemnity before? Your firms have not issued on your behalf. They have. Hey, more from who you. So there's no risk. You are just architects. You feature on a project. You don't give anything. If something happens, what happens? I think you're not doing serious projects. But for serious projects, they will require professional indemnity. Oh, but you are still working for firms. You should cite some of these things. Your bosses do not indemnify themselves. So it's a form of liability insurance that helps protect professional advice and service providing individuals and companies from bearing full cost of defending against a negligence claim made by a client and damages awarded in such civil. So for your negligence, the client may incur some cost and then you slap it on you. So that will indemnify you. But like I'm saying, we just leave our professionals to walk away with a lot of things. Once you have a serious client, you provided something and then there's some issue that crops up out of negligence of the architect to have carried out something and then it involves losses, you have to pay. Some jobs require that you submit professional indemnity clause before. So note it. So I think typically if you are asked to advise on how to apply some of these securities, you would be able to. Because you understand it from the practical point of view. Now I'll go to the variations, which is contract variations and modifications. That's under section 87 of the law, public procurement law. So the law recognizes that indeed you cannot be exhaustive or think through any project, but there could be some additions, modifications, extensions, and what have you. But it shouldn't be the order of the day. Or it shouldn't be out of it. Quickly has to come back to play. So we look at the type, the variations. That's the key thing. And then how we seek approval for them, and then we conclude. So we have what you call the types. We call the avoidable variations. Sorry, unavoidable variations. When I say unavoidable, I think it's clear. There's some variation that whatever you do, it will happen. Ground conditions, you may not have a hold on them, so they'll happen. or there's a new legislation that all buildings more than 5 stories should introduce a lift or something. I mean, legislation can easily create a variation. That one is not your doing. It's unavoidable. So that will happen anyways. We have variations for convenience of clients. Also requested by the client due to a desired change in client's requirements. And this cannot be instructed unless adequate funds are available and have been approved. Let's say the client wants to change the story heights. I see the universities always do. Let's add one more floor for student intake. There's this story I tell when I mention this type of variation. The Tetekwachi Manfi Road, they were going to do the service lines, relocation of service lines. At the time, the then roads minister, and this is a real case, he saw that they had gone on tender and they had recommended a firm to do the relocation, very heavy amount. And at client's convenience, the client said that particular thing, he was not going to do it because of the name involved. So at the client's convenience, he decided to do something otherwise because the guy who had won those things was going to benefit. And the name was called Kempon. And the full name was Kennedy Japan at the time. So client can conveniently decide to do something with the project, but then you bear the full costs. What I'm saying is that if at the client's convenience, you always have to advise on the cost implications, and then he agreed that he will bear. Unavoidable, client's convenience. And then the next is convenience of the contractor. Contractor can also create a variation at his convenience. That's, contractor is doing this work and he comes and says, Mr. Architect, your design is supposed to be in situ slab. I want to introduce precast slabs, which will give you this advantage. Your service lines will be easily passed through, the faster construction. He will make all the case. And he's demonstrated that he was going to save you costs for about, let's say, 20%. So when the contractor submits that and you assess, the only thing he has to give you is that he has to give you, what do you call it? Some kind of indemnity that should it fail, he'll bear the brunt. But you approve based on contractor's convenience and then becomes a variation. But it's mostly to the advantage of clients because it's always a proposal that will bring you some benefits. But he has to sign onto it and be sure that it will work. So a contractor can also create a variation. The main causes of variations, you and I should know, but for the purpose of this lecture, let's go through. You and I know the main causes. Poor planning, inadequate upfront planning, inadequate design preparation, poor scoping of a particular assignment. That's where we come in. Poor scoping. Architects, think beyond what the client is thinking and advising, because he'll come back and say, hey, man, we review it. So one can't shame you, but you should do the leading. Then inadequate drafting. Poorly drafted specifications and contract documentation as it results in different understanding by service providers and contracting party around vital aspects of the services, works or procurement. So the drafting is very key. If it's inadequate, the documents are inadequate, you're not too sure who is going to do this, who's going to do that, it always brings about variations. Lack of clarity around risk allocation. Responsibility for particular project activities and expense like data to be provided by the client should be specific. If you don't know this person will do this and later it turns out that it's not the client who will do it, it becomes an additional thing. Freight and insurance issues are issues that you need to declare where they are coming from, or they all add to the project. So variations come in different forms. And then, of course, the effect of fluctuations. The effect of fluctuations can result in contra variations. So the fluctuation can be said that it's so much that it's changed the project entirely from 10 million to 15 million because you are paying more in fluctuations. Fluctuations are part of the contracts anyway. So except that maybe you didn't anticipate that extent. And there should always be a fluctuation clause and a variation clause in your standard contract document. Now, how do you manage the variations? So from this, we all know that variations will occur in any way. The unavoidable ones will occur. The contractor can bring something. If the client, in the desire to adapt to address future issues, can decide to also create variations. Like Bank of Ghana has added up to address future issues, as it were. So they have occurred. But how do you manage them when they occur? It's a authorization by client agency. Action needs to be taken promptly to authorize unavoidable variations so that issuing the instructions does not delay the contractor. Agreeing on a defined authorized amount or limit and a fast-track procedure. So for unavoidable ones, if it happens, the thing has happened on site, we are in Accra. Something has happened and there's a site condition that you need to take a decision and proceed. Do you wait to get to Accra for MD to be apprised of before he takes a decision, before it's relayed, by which time you would have incurred additional costs? So you always have to give some authority limit to a site rep or resident engineer to take decisions beyond certain limits. So if, let's say, he has authority to take a decision to commit 1 million, quickly, when the thing happens, no, this is the remedy, let's do it and avoid additional costs. So there's that authority to deal with it before it relates to head office for information, because he has taken a decision within its limits. You don't do a project and then everything rests at the top. The site people should have some limits. That's why we give interest even to people on site to be able to little things you handle, and then the job flows. So that's one way of managing this. Clients should undertake not to order a variation for convenience of clients unless it has been advised of the full costs and time implications and has approved or provided funding for the projects. So for clients' convenience, you don't authorize it until you've been apprised of the cost implications. Because as for that, the client says, I desire it, but he should know how much it's going to cost him. Because if he doesn't know when you proceed to do it, at a point you may not have money to pay and then the project stalls. So quickly, maybe if you give him the cost information, he can come and say, okay, instead of adding 2 floors, say add 1 floor, or let's do this phase. You know, the cost will inform him better. So quickly let him have an idea of the costs. Then instructing variations. When you are instructing the variations, an instruction can only be given by a client's authorized rep. Those of you who have managed projects in the hinterlands before, there are projects typically, the DC will come and give instruction, the chief will come, the assemblyman will come, and the contractor is confused. Because that place is kind of a stake, like everybody has a stake in the project. So they come to the site, the chief in the crowd bar, the chief will come, oh, let's do this. I did a project late 1990s, and the then get fund administrator, I think he was the first administrator. This was a hostel project for university. He came to the site and he said, we did terrazzo floor. And terrazzo, you know, it's very, very durable. And we're doing louver blades. At time, NACO was the brand name. The administrator came and went around and said, no, this is not nice. We should change the terrazzo to tiles and then use glazed windows. The architect said, oh, chief, I said, are you the one paying? This is public funds. So that's client convenience, whether it makes sense or not. CC is the one paying. But how do they instruct it? Quickly, the KOS has to give an idea of how much it will cost to hack all this and come and apply tiles and take off all this. So that figure should be able to advise the client further whether I want to proceed. And if you want to proceed, then he has to instruct it so that it doesn't turn out that the consultant didn't know what he was doing. So, and he's saying that instructions should be in writing. When you go to site, you look at the site books and you don't see any instructions. you don't have any basis for carrying out any instruction, no matter who said it. It has to be in writing.
About the issue, the scenario you just gave, the giving instructions to the professionals. What if his instructions doesn't go well with the project efficiency? It would thereby defiling the name of that particular architect or something. So what's your advice to the professional?
Have you heard what we say the client is always right? Yes, so it can defy every professional thing. That's why we are saying that he should instruct by writing. You would advise. You see, as for a professional, the best you can do always is to put your advice on paper. So you look at the cost implications and say, look, when I was doing my MSc, one man who taught me near Masakote, so look, your boss can give you the most unfriendly instruction to do. But when he shouts at you, blah, 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 go back, sit down and write. Say, following discussions on X, Y, Z, can you kindly advise I proceed with this? Your kind approval. Then you just send it to him. Say, following what you said, can you please sign so that I proceed? If you fail to sign, then you fail to do. Look, people do all sorts of things, but when we want to ask them to commit on paper, now they have a second look at it. So as a professional, your bit is to make sure that you advise professionally. This is what. So we give a fair view of what the cost implications will be, and we took it to the client to sign off, instructing it. The client has employed you. He says, "This is what I want." You think it defies. You have given your opinion. He says, "I still want it." He should instruct it. But you cannot say that I won't do it. Can you say that? Oh, life is a different thing. I mean, there's safety issues are issues that nobody will even. But I'm saying that if you think that it's cost efficiency, and the client says, "This is what I want," you can only have your opinion on paper. But you cannot say, "I'm not going to do it because I think this is less expensive." As for that, then you not get a next job. It's all about tact. You can't defy a client or that if he insists that is what I want to do. You would have given all the advice on paper and he says this is what I'll do. Either you walk away, we have the option to also walk away. But to say that you are going to fight the client because you think, what they are saying is, it's an opinion anyway. Before instructing a variation, unless the instructions is required urgently in order for the works to proceed, request the contractor to advise the time and cost impact of the proposed variation. Clear. Where possible, instruct a variation only after the full time and cost implications have been evaluated and agreed in writing with the contractor. Do not alter a contractor's written quotation without agreement of the contractor. If there's a change agreed, it is preferable to have a revised quotation submitted. So what we are saying here is that if a contractor brings his quotation on the implications of a variation, and then you deem that he may have made some mistake, don't write and cancel. It will be an issue for dispute later. Let him submit a revised one, taking care of the correction. So don't be writing on it because it could be a source of conflict. Do not instruct a variation after completion unless the variation is for the purpose of dealing with the effects. So what people do too is that the project is almost at completion, then he's saying he's come to create a variation. Once it's completed, you cannot create a variation. A variation is varied on ongoing projects. But what people do is that, let's vary and then add furniture. Furniture is goods. This is works. They are two different things. And then value a variation. This is where the QSs come in. You have a direct costs, the cost of the actual performance of the works which you need to evaluate. Indirect costs include overheads, admin costs, supervision costs. So this is, you look at the works and then you value all the things that they have instructed into costs. So you have an idea of the amount of variation. And then what do? You seek approval if it is more than 10% of your contract amount. Note that when you have an original project and then you have variations 9.999%, you can handle it at that level without seeking approval. Under Section 87. The moment it exceeds 10%, you have to seek approval from the relevant review body. 10% of the original amount, relevant review body. That is if the aggregate amount takes you to that body. So let's say you have a 1 million project, and then you have variations 200,000. It's more than 10%. That's 20%. So it comes 1.2. Where will you seek the approval for? Practical. 1 million project original, you have varied up to 1.2 aggregates. This is VRA. Where will you seek the approval for? You have VRA, 1 million to 1.2. Where will you seek? Which review body will approve the 1.2 for you? It's over 10%. You say? Yes. OPPA, they don't give approval. You see why the questions will be practical. So central approves figures over some amount. So if the 1.2 doesn't go to central, why do you go to central? Central will send it back to you. So the questions will be working with figures. Oh. Figures. And when the original contract is less than the threshold of, let's say, central, let's say the original figure is less than threshold, but then when you added variation, which is more than 10%, and it comes to central, then you have to go to central. But if the aggregate does not get to central, you don't take it there, because central don't look at any figure that doesn't get to their threshold. So with the originals, same. I'm happy you have an idea of how the questions will come. You are still saying central. So I'm telling you that central will only look at figures that land in their threshold. So if it's not up to the central threshold, you have to do it at the ETC level. Yes, if the aggregate, the original is not even central, but aggregate takes you to central, then you go there. But the first question is what's yours? 2. Yes. So you have to go back to the ETC, say that it's above 10%, so they should look at it and approve. Because the total amount 1.2 doesn't get to central's value. So yes. So when you are coming to central for variations, note the submission requirements. When they're practical, we'll look at it before we look at your document. Submit prior to executing the variation or immediately after the execution for unavoidable variations. So you don't wait, execute the work like Bank of Ghana did, and then you bring it to us. After we can treat away when we realize that it's so make. So we admit that for some variations you'd have incurred it and you have to take a decision, but immediately after that submit it. But the regular ones, don't wait, start executing before you bring it someday, because you are not rubber stamp. And the challenge is that you may have committed it and the contractor may have even been paid at our blind side. And when you raise issues and then maybe the cost issues come down, how are you going to reconcile that? So it's always good to get approval before you commit into payment. After payment, when we realize that you have paid, we don't even look at it. Outline reasons for the variation. Section 87 is very emphatic that give the reasons for the variations, what reasons are accounted for. And it's even better when you look at each reason and the corresponding cost. It makes it simpler for anybody looking at it. We had to change the louver blade, this to this. It cost this. You had to do this. Just look at it very, very clearly, and then it becomes easy for everybody to look at.
At this point, the variation was at the client's desire and convenience. Will you state it as the client's desire?
Of course. As for that, it's clear. You can't hide that information. The client, for a reason X, Y, they wanted to do this. So at times we look at all the reasons and we even call the client to come and defend. So it's not you. You there, you are submitting on behalf of the clients. So state it as it is. Don't try to. When you try to hide some information, you would ultimately be responsible. Confirm issuance of instructions. If you have those, attach them so that we know that it was clearly, especially for very issues that are controversial. Let's see the instructions. Submit evaluation of the variations consistent with the contract conditions. Here is where the KYCs come in. You don't have a variation and then you go and look for your rate somewhere. The rate should be consistent with what the documents say. Even if they are allied works, it should be linked. Like you have a specification of concrete and it's priced this way. If you change the specification, you should extract the pricing from that original. You can't build something new. So you don't introduce a variation and then somebody will benefit because it's new works. It has to be related to the old works so that you don't take advantage of it. But the KYCs will do that for you. Then you provide information on the progress status of the original contract. So you're asking for variation. The original contract, why is he saying? Where have you got into? What are the challenges? What is the payment status? So when I say progress, is the fiscal progress and then the state payments. So let's see how the original contract has fared and for which you are adding. And of course, provision of evidence of funding. If you don't have money, you can't be given approval. So if you look at the last few months before the year ended, they were flooding the central with a lot of requests for variations, especially the route. You know, they were giving instructions in the regions, do this route, this route. The contractors wanted. So they loaded everything on us. So you submit everything, but funding source, finance has to clear you, right? So they were on us, and there was political pressure. You have to approve that thing. Hey, minister says go to site. They are losing votes, and you say you will approve. So you say, okay, you have looked at everything. Everything is fine. Subject to getting funding commitment from Ministry of Finance before committing the works. We left it at that.
My question is, before getting to the stage of the variation, haven't they already confirmed that you have funds already?
Very good question. So, like I said earlier, you have to look at the implications and then you inform the client that this is how much it will cost. The client will say, proceed. So that is supposed to be the clearance you need at the time. But the actual funding for GOG projects is from Ministry of Finance. Road Ministry cannot, look, finance pays everything. So the amount of money we are talking about is billions. Oh. It's all regions, and look at the election heat and they are adding up. So it's finance who has to commit, and finance doesn't have the money. So at the end of the day, they want them to go. And in fact, most of them were on site already anyway. So you can't fight the system, but you cover yourself. So we are saying that we have noted everything, but the agency can only proceed when they have confirmed funding from Ministry of Finance before they commit the works. So if they go ahead and commit the works, they will have to answer at any day. We have done our procurement bit. You understand? So much as there's evidence of funding, it's finance that can commit. And Minister of Finance was not ready to write that letter. No finance minister will commit billions of cedis when he knows that he may read the next budget and there's no money. But as for the road, it's a big issue. The bills that we have accrued and we continue to accrue, it's serious. Because everybody is important in this country, isn't it? So if the man goes to live here and he wants the road extended to his place, you go and fight for it and then they will let him extend. And road per kilometer is very expensive. So the moment you add 2-3 kilometers, you are talking of millions. And we do it every day because everybody is important. Oh, yes, Speaker of Parliament, the next one, you see that the road is done. You see, and one of the things that is even hurting is that the president is going to some community and the little money that they have, instead of them to do something, to just go and grade and roll just for him to have riding comfort for a period. It rains and everything is come back. And that money is committed. As for that, is on account, paid. You have a long way to go. Very long way to go. We have to. I like the use of the word reset, but I'm not sure whether it's the right direction at the right time. Because our problems are very heavy. And we are not ready to change as a people. So that is about this. You know what to bring. So the recommendations for this are ensuring adequate project preparation, contract drafting, and clarity in the definition of responsibilities by allowing enough time to project timelines. This is what we don't do. Preparation of projects should take time, more clarity, prepared very well before you place on tender. Strictly observing design procedures for managing contract variations and contract, observing consciousness in executing and implementing projects, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So I'll do the last slide and then I'll take questions. Here's a Fidic highlight because, like I'm saying, it's not something that you practice with these things, but you should understand the books that you use here and there. So Fidic are done by the International Federation of Engineers, a global representation for the consulting engineers. And we have the suits of contract covers that we use. You've heard the red book, the pink book, these things. Yes, they are used for different things, but the details, as you apply them under contracts, is what makes it exciting. So the red book is a condition of contract for construction for building and engineering works designed by the employer. While the pink is the harmonized red book conditions of contracts for construction for building and engineering works designed by the employer for the use in parts for multilateral development banks only. Yellow book condition of contract for plants and design and build for electrical and mechanical plants and for building work designed by the contractor. Silver book is conditions for contract for turnkey, EPC turnkey. The gold book is condition of contract for design and build for design, build and operate, BOT. So just note them for. As you have to advise some clients on what to use, but the details are going to be implemented on the project as they churn out. At this point, I believe I've taken enough of your time. I apologize, first of all, for coming in late. I thought it was in the afternoon, so when they called me, I had to rush and come in. I'll take questions. I want practical questions, something that relates to your practice. Before I go to the floor. Yes.
Okay, so assuming a body goes ahead to do a project and then you hear that they didn't go through the process or they didn't complete and they had commenced, do you have some penalty that or do you arrest them, or I don't know? Is there like an enforcement?
So when you say they didn't go through before they comment, that means they didn't seek the necessary approvals and then they committed.
Yes.
They committed government to it. Okay. So I want to get my statistics right, but I think it's only procurement issue that has taken Minister of Finance to jail. Right? Procurement issues have taken Minister of Finance through the courts, and some have been jailed. The Salome issue, the Safmafu issue. I mean, as for procurement, that is what even took the last, but this EC chair out of office. Procurement issues can come to you any day, even if you are on pension. And they'll drag you from wherever you are to come and answer questions. Under the law, we have what we call penalty units. When they determine that you have defaulted, there are some penalty units that they can slap on you, that you are refunding some money, but ultimately you can go to jail. So for procurement issues, it's something that anytime we do training for the CEOs, we tell them, if you're a chief executive, don't flex your muscle. Make sure you abide by the principles. For me, I don't know why people want to have permanent interest in certain things. Because whoever does a job, once you are a sitting CEO, you have interactions with them. So why do you say that you want this person and at all costs and you bend all the rules and it brings a problem to you? So if you have to advise people, let them know that, look, if it's not going well, leave it. There are certain things that the moment you follow. And civil servants, what they do is that they'll just be quiet and doing the photocopy and keeping the papers. Photocopy, keep. The day you're out of office, that's when they release all those letters. And you've seen them panning out now. Procurement issues are very, very, very serious issues. You see, even if you're in the space, perception is that already you are doing something bad. Once you are doing procurement, the least action, somebody thinks that you are doing it to your benefit. So be open. Let it open. If this person is winning it, let it fair. I mean, you don't have to take a position that the job has to go to this. No, no, no. I don't believe in that.
Okay, so if let's come to works, and then you've gotten all it's in process, and then the contractor just starts. I mean, upon the entity giving him that, oh, he should go, the approval will come, and then he goes further, and then maybe the approval, you deny it. Can you stop the works? Or
if you don't have approval, you don't have any business going to any site to see whether somebody is working. It is his own risk he has taken. You understand? We are giving approval. Is the entity, somebody has asked somebody to go to some site and work. If it's private, I don't know. I don't want to know. So if we have gone through a process and then concrete approval is denied, which you have done a lot, you have done a lot of denials. So you have no business going to a site. So if you have put your money there, it's your own cup of tea. Nobody will even come and follow you. Why are you on the site? I don't know why you're there. I don't want to know. As far as the government is not paying anything to you. There are a lot of things that come in the system and they are denied. Trust me. Yes.
Okay, so this question is on the variations. So when we're looking at the causes of variations, you spoke about poor scoping for one of the causes of variations. I missed how to address or how to manage the poor scoping of variations. Could you kindly elaborate on that?
Okay. So the poor scoping is that engaging the clients, you didn't get a better appreciation of what the scope of the work will be. Yeah, you understand? So the moment you think you have grasped all what he said and then you commit into design, you realize that he left out certain things. So I'm saying that you, the architect, should lead. You being a professional should be able to, for instance, let's say the guy says he wants this facility, and you know that functionally this facility cannot come without this. But you don't lead the person on, and then you just go strictly by what he's saying. So it's strictly the architects who are supposed to lead on that to make sure that the scope, because you have architectural requirements or functional requirements that you need to meet. The lay person may not know them. So if you don't lead them for them to scope the job very well, from the time you commit the job, realize that you should have added this, and then it comes to play that, oh, we left out this. You don't have any reason why that thing was left out. Right. No, it is being diligent and getting stakeholders to also, but you see, people work in like isolation. As for design preparation, look, me, when I was practicing actively as a QS, I do work and I give it to my subordinate to look at it. It doesn't take anything from you. Engage a team. Somebody, look, my boss who trained me, that's how he trained me. He was a boss, but he would do anything and go through. You will see a few things that you draw his attention, boss, and then somebody else will look at it. By the time it goes through that mail, people would have brought in ideas, and then you have something packaged very well. But people want to work. Those of us who were in school, I had a mate like that. Every day you go to the swimming pool tech and you'll be learning alone. When he hears of material, oh, photocopy for me. Today, in practice, it's about the same thing in a small corner. Open up, discuss, solicit ideas, discuss, get issue. I mean, that's how we progress as professionals. That will be taken from you when you ask the very basic question and somebody addresses it. So if you are working with a team, the engineer should see, this is my design. How do you think this can be addressed? Discuss. That's why we have moved into the era of value engineering now. The team will sit down and look at it properly and see how this will work, how to address the client's needs, blah, blah. By the time you bring everything out, you realize that everybody has no problem with what is coming out. But you finish, and at times the thing you have even designed is not buildable. You go to the site and building it, implementing becomes a problem. Architects like the curves and what have you, and then it becomes a huge challenge. Now getting formwork for all those things become a problem. But is it addressing the object of the thing? No. You understand? Then you also fall short of your specs. So the QS will assume certain things and do his bills. By the time the price is not meeting, the engineers will come and then engineers will say, this will not work. I have to introduce some. Look, so the team is not coordinating very well. So all these things are very important. Team coordination, discussion, working with maybe a project lead, put everybody on board, and then you realize that you meet the client's needs, and then when you take off, it's very smooth. Yes, sir. If a variation is at the instance of the contractor.
Didn't go through the right procedures to initiate variation, and he's done the works. How can he reclaim his cash?
But if you have not been approved to do variations, how can you reclaim cash? Let me get your question straight.
So there's a typical scenario. Let's assume a politician promises a contractor, he will find a way to pay you, and he's also committed his cash into the project with no approvals from maybe any of the MMDAs, or which happens. I just want to find out, is there a process or a way the contractor can take back his cash?
Because the process will be how he says you pay, let him pay you. You see, payments from government purse can only be through procedures. That's why every government agency, they have accountants, auditors. There's a trail. So if you don't have a contract to start with, the first thing is that you have to submit a contract. And if you have gone beyond the contract amount, you have to submit approvals that give you that amount you're asking for. So if you don't have any of this, you can't even make any submission in the first place. So that politician who said you should go and do it, you go and sit down with him. Then you find out, because in the government structure, he can never pay you. He can never pay you. So people have committed funds and then look, they are bleeding. Because as for government system, no way. They cannot pay you. So you take a risk when you follow somebody who go into the work, who regularize it. If you're lucky, they may be able to regularize it within a period, but you always have to wait. You know that from last year, August, September, people were just feet dragging because they were not sure of how the elections will fare. So they were all feet dragging, measuring how much they put their foot forward in some jobs. Because if you don't take time, and like what happened, the person you're following right now, he's not thinking of daily bread. Though. So for me, even the ones that you have even gone through a procedure and then you have approval for the original contracts, but then you have not been authorized to do any extra work and they ask you to do and you do, you have a problem. Because me, if I'm an auditor or I sit in a central tender and I know that visibly this work has been done somewhere, and you're now coming to tell me that these are the reasons you did this extra, I'll not commit to it, because the moment you commit to it, when there's an issue, you have to go and answer. So we have to be careful. We want to do work, but let's be careful.
Say please, on the fit books, there's a portion that reads that door to door designed by the employer. I wanted to know who is the employer in that context.
Oh, the employer is what do you call it? The client, more or less.
When you say designed by the client, what does it mean?
So it's like they take responsibility. Okay, if you look at the conditions very well, it is something to address their concerns. That's why some of them are designed and built. So the responsibility lies with them. But I'm saying you just read the preamble to most of them, you appreciate them better. But as for specific clauses, it's tied to projects, so you may understand it when you implement them. Oh, she's saying donor funded projects. Okay, so this public procurement law, the application is for any project that uses public funds. And for public funds, even if it's 1% government stake, you have to use the law. Okay? Any project that has government stake, you have to use public procurement law. That's under section 14, application. But if donors are funding a project and the donors desire that their conditions are used, that's section 96, international obligations. So you use the donor like documents. So the World Bank documentation for XYZ is what will apply and not the PPA Act. But that is when the donors, by the agreement that they have signed with the Ministry of Finance, they say that they will use their documents. For Ghana, over a period, Ghana was one of the first project countries that was on the pilot scheme. They assessed Ghana to be one of the countries that has evolved by way of using our procurement structures. So most of the donors who come now, they use the PPA system. Because Ghana has been tried and tested, they have used the law over a period and they think it's working, blah, blah, blah. But otherwise, the donors go somewhere and then they use their conditions. But even if they all have to use it, Section 96 of the law allows that the donor-funded projects, they use the donor, especially when they are using things like pharmaceuticals, IT systems, high-profile ones, they use the donor. But because our documents have not been developed to that extent to suit those specific procurement. Procurement is not just about work, so if you look at the kind of procurements that they do elsewhere, the goods, the types, it's serious. And some of them are just not even goods delivery. It is technical services. Technical services, and you need to. I'm not sure you want to go into deep procurement like that. Yes, madam.
Thank you. So if there's a project that has been approved by PPA, if there's a variation, where do they go to? Where does that entity go?
Okay, so let me give you an idea of what PPA does. PPA is the regulator of the public procurement law. So they bring policies, regulations, and what have you. The only thing extra that they do is that their board, the PPA board, gives approval for the use of restricted tendering and single sourcing. Otherwise, anything they do is policy related or regulation related. So when you say PPA approves any of the methods, they may approve. And the review bodies, they look at compliance issues. So if you look at typically under Section 21, what the review bodies do is that they look at from planning stage. That's why they will want to look at what have you even planned? Do you have a procurement plan? Do you have budget? From the time you have inception of the project through to implementation award to the time they give concurrent approval. So they monitor all. So they look at all the compliance documents. Have you advertised? So typical evaluation report, I'll look at, did you do an advert? Did it meet the minimum requirements? How many people tender for? Let me look at your tender opening sheets. If you say 5 tender for, sign sheets show that 5 tendered for. And these are the figures that they submitted. I'll confirm these figures. And then you do evaluation. So we'll check everything along the line and see that, of course, the person you have recommended as the list you are giving to is the person who, on merit, has the job. So we give approval for you to continue to go and award as an entity. Then you award. PPA doesn't come in anything variation. When you need anything variation, it goes to the review bodies again because they have approved and then they handle variation. PPA only comes in at a point when you want to go and do ratification. Maybe you have done something that didn't follow procedures, but you did it on good intent and you had a reason why you had to flout. And then you package all your projects and say under Section 90, I'm coming to ratify. That means I want you to look at my records and see that I didn't have any ill intentions. I've done it above board, and then they inspect and say, okay, it's fine. So we are giving you ratification approval as if you have gone through the processes and had approvals. So that is PPA's role. So the board of PPA, the governing board of PPA. PPA has a management and directors. That's the board is responsible for giving the approvals.
Government of Ghana has procured your services at conference, and let's say there's a change in government or something, and for whatever reason you are not paid for your consultancy services. What are your avenues of ensuring that you are paid what is due you?
I believe every consultancy contract will have terms and conditions. So if you have a contract, it should have terms, conditions, deliverables. So, or what account will somebody say, I'm not going to pay you? If you have signed a contract, let's say, I have been a consultant for Ministry of Finance from 2007. I renew every 2 years. So I have a contract running up to September. Okay. So a government has changed. I have terms, I'm delivering, I'm working, I'm paying. I'm being paid every month X amount or so. Why would somebody say I won't pay you? What will be there? So your contract terms should speak for itself. If you sign that's why in signing contracts you have to be very careful. So when you have a contract and you're supposed to deliver XYZ and you are delivering, who would say I won't pay you?
It's because they just, let's say, they just ended Agenda 110. Still, yeah. I mean, some of us were on the project and then our offices kept saying that they are not being paid for consultancy services.
Okay, so it is the usual delay that will happen. But on specific about Agenda 111, let me tell you something. Under the law, they discuss budgets as having, if you have budget for something, you can do it. So it's the reference point. It's not how much the project costs. It is the available budget that determines whether a project will come on or not. I want to be very professional without sounding political. If I want to do a project now, okay, and I have my finance guy here, I have my logistics person here, and I say, I want to do this project. This is my dream as a leader, okay? The first point of call is that the dream I have, she will advise me how much it will cost, how much is available, and how much can be made. She will tell me, we can get 111 or so. We have all the personnel, doctors, nurses, all the sections. We have the personnel to man the hospitals. Then we are proceeding. I have money for it. Like we've talked about this law and having budget for it. Do you know the cost of the 101 projects, the total cost? Even a whole budget cannot even fund it. So for me, if there's no money for something, you can't commit somebody to doing it. It's as simple as that. If you know the cost of one, multiplied by 111, the total amount, the money is not sitting there. And there was no plan as in the next 2-3 years, this is how much you're going to. That is why when you spread like this, now I know some of them are at foundation stage. I know somebody who, when he took the 101 money, he quickly went to buy bonds. He's on site and he's saying that the bonds he bought, he was giving haircut. No, that is the reality. He bought, and the same government whose money he used to buy bond has given haircut, so it's kind of crazy. And today, the guy has not visited the sites. Look, talking about project preparation, if you know how the one was packaged, some of us from day one, without being prophets of doom, said that it will not fly. You and I know how projects are done. The same design for every site. Does it happen? The same design for every site in any of the regions. The same design. Whether the site is slopey, nothing. That is how it was done. And most of them, the sites had not been secured. I know one of my mates who mans one of the projects. They had to fight, bring langars at Damfa. For 6 months, we were fighting. So if you don't have land, how do you design a project? So, like I said, it's a reflection of we as Ghanaians. I mean, you could have the best of intentions, but plan well. For me, if you had said, let's do one teaching hospital at every region, 11 or 16 of them, you could have achieved, because the money you have spent now could have achieved those, and you face the next 4 years, you do. But you have spread all over this. No person, no government will commit all his funds to come and achieve 101 for you, because he also has plans. That's the reality, trust me. So some of the projects will suffer. That's why the president was smart in his address and said that they are open to people who will come and partner them and get it functional and run for a period. So he's offering that. So the ones that are about 70, 80%, I mean, a lot has gone into it anyway. So it takes a little to flesh up, polish up. But even you ask yourself, even if they finish 40 of them now, where are the personnel to man? Look, this country, it's only when you need certain things that I realize that we don't have abundance of a lot of things. To get doctors, the technicians to man the labs, look, it's not easy. But we just wish, listen, we say you are doing it. So some projects will suffer. As for that, there's no two ways. The government may not be able to continue most of them because most of them are even at very low progress stages anyway. The ones that are more than 80% are just a few. And even that is just the core and shell. When you say hospital, you're talking about putting equipment there to run. So it is a very dicey issue. It's not something that is a joke. At times, politicians, they'll just play with our minds. Well, now you have to find somebody to do it, blah, blah, blah. If government should change now, they will say something different because the money is not there. Either they decide not to pay everybody and they use all the money. Of course, there's no money. Even the debt we have as a country, you have no idea. See,
I also wanted to find out, there's a popularization of this causes logistics and procurement or something. I understand that the laws governing our practice, we are entreated to partner with QSs. But what I want to find out is there overlaps in function, between these two discipline, quantity surveyors and these people in application to our services?
Okay, good question. So you see, the world has become very competitive. So you have architects doing law, QS is doing, it's a competitive world now. And it's about numbers game. So you have to always position yourself. What the procurement people have done cleverly, they have latched on the word procurement. And they have projected themselves as if they know it all. But I always say that, I've talked to people all the time. The chief is my very good friend. I said, look, if you don't separate engineering procurement from the goods procurement, we'll have a problem going forward. What they do is supply chain. It's about goods. These Incoterms, they are very good at Incoterms. But when you say supply is taking this from here and bringing it here, or passing through here and then all the content and bringing it here. That's all. But engineering procurement goes beyond that. Look at what goes into design of a project, engineering project, and the implementation. They have no idea about it. But they argue that what they are saying under the law is that they are playing a coordination function. So when they say head of procurement should be them, they are coordinating. So if, for example, you go to Gridco, VRA, ECG, the engineering firms that have engineering bits, they are supposed to go to the engineering bit, get the activities that they are doing, put them in procurement plans, man the procurement activities, do the plans, see to the implementation, under tender opening, they will take the minutes, their secretaries, the ETCs. So it's more of coordination role, but they're not supposed to be heads. Just yesterday, somebody told me that, I should go and beg for some procurement guy, but Gridco, and he was the procurement head, they are trying to bring an engineer. And I was telling myself, am I stupid? An engineer going to help procurement at an engineering firm, and I should go and beg that a package supply guy to go and lord over an engineer. It will not happen because he doesn't even appreciate the engineering bit. You understand? So we have to understand we are in the engineering space, and works procurement and services are more complex and far exciting than the goods. Goods is very simple. Some of us who have done the goods procurement for a while, look, it is just, imagine somebody who was given a technical service to do on this tax stamp. He was using a goods, he didn't even understand the basic requirements of this until I came in and said, two-state tendering. It is just goods supply, and then the amount supply chain, the stores management, and what have you. That is what they do at best. So nobody should tell you go and partner a procurement guy. They are just playing coordination role. But engineering function as in costing, implementation, cost control, cost management issues is the quantity surveyors who will help you.
Sir, in answering his first question, you said about the Agenda 111. You said there has to be a budget before you start work, right? Should that always be the case? So, for instance, when COVID happened and they had to put that emergency buildings, hospitals, did they have to? Nobody anticipated that, so there probably wasn't a budget for anything like that. But still, they went ahead to put up some facilities. So my question is it always that there has to be a budget, or in certain extreme situations, emergencies, something can be happening?
I think you answered the question somehow. You see, budgets doesn't mean that it should be there and then. 111 was, the COVID issue was something that nobody anticipated. But even that, we found budget for it. All the procurements that were done under COVID, I recall we were not sleeping every day. They are buying this. But we had budget for it because the donors gave us money. Government also assigned budgetary allocations to it. Nothing came without budgets. If you don't have budget, you can't plan on. 111, what I'm saying is that the entire project there's difference between having budgets and even having available funds. There's no funding for it. You understand? The total project. It was supposed to be delivered within 18 months, if you recall. The president even gave 2 extension of deadlines. So the 18 months, the money was not available. Even if they looked at all the projections for the next 5-6 years, everything should go to that. It was not available. So if you don't have available money to do project, you cannot achieve the project. So at best, those contractors who are smart, when they give the money, they do some work and then they are waiting. If you say go to site, you have to show that you'll be able to have. Otherwise, you go and borrow money, you lock up. COVID, there was a lot of budgetary allocations that came along the line. When we started, I recall, Ghana State Surveyors, we partnered with the other people. We did the Ghana East Center there. There was budget for it. There was money flowing every day. And I recall my minister, this Kolebu, the beds, what do you call it? Oh, this equipment that they were using for we bought a lot of them. No budgets. Health was fighting us. They would come. The minister would say he slapped the budget. They should reduce the numbers. They made provision for it because the donors brought us money and we paid for it because it was lives. So money was available. That's why I started by saying that once appropriation is done, agencies are giving money. So you spend within what you have. You can't spend what you don't have.
Yeah, so say in that instance, is it that the Ministry of Health or whoever was in charge, so is it that they had to use some money because, let's say earlier on, they didn't know that there was going to be COVID, right? And then when it happened, they had already probably read the budget. So is it that they had to now take some money, maybe they're probably going to use for something, or is it that they...
So government reprioritize and they have a lot of influence from the donors. So they had money. You see, some of these things, for the benefit of the discussion, 111, Agenda 111, it never passed through the system. So not tender review has no records of 111. It was packaged at the presidency. Ministry of Health, the project design team that has been at Health for years, they have a project implementation team. They were not part of it. Yesterday, we had a letter asking for documentation on the cathedral to submit to the Special Prosecutor's Office. We have no records of that. It didn't pass there. That's why I'm saying that some projects that are packaged as somebody will do single source. Look, these things are things that worry us. It distorts the whole system. So go to the system. 111 is not there. It didn't pass how they give the approvals. So that's why I'm saying that if you don't go through the system, you don't have a contract that reflects that there's money. Now getting payment becomes a problem. I think I've done justice to the questions. And whatever confidential information here remains confidential. Scooping. Hey. So he wants to know which of the slides are very important. They are all important. But like I said, I related with you initially to know that you're all from consultant background. So my questions will be geared towards that. You'll be giving scenarios. And I always will not say what is this or what is that or explain this, list this, discuss. No. At best, discuss something. So I want to see the professionalism in you. Give you scenarios. At least something on the structures is very important for you to understand. The procurement structures. So we'll be giving scenarios as to how you advise on going through the structures to be able to get the best out of it. If you have a stage whereby you have incurred variation, I mean, these things will really play out. But generally, once you understand the principle, you shouldn't have any problem.
So, sir, please, I wanted to ask, based on your experience in the industry, can you speak to the high cost per square meter? That is like currently in Accra, the $3,000, $2,000 per square. Because I know there's a project that my boss handled with a foreign investor, who that's that pricing came as a shock to him in the States over there. It's not something they are used to. Yeah, so I'm shocked as to why.
Thank you very much. What do you produce here? Ghana, what do you produce here? Apart from local sand and cement, is even the clinker is from outside, so you know the cement price is very high. So what do you produce here? I operate a lot in South Africa. They have everything you need there. The steel is, look, so you can't build cheaper than them. And our port charges, you saw recently how the port charges fare. You bring the things here. And these projects rely heavily on imported materials. And our tax systems are such that they are very exorbitant. So you can't deliver a project here at any low price. It's so high. You want to ask a last question?
Yes.
Hey, you're not discharging me today. Okay.
Yeah, so those independent procurement bodies, I think you mentioned ECG. How are they overseen? Is there a structure that regulates their activities? For instance, the energy minister said there were some procurements, and then when it got to the port, they were not able to clear.
5 years.
5 years. And then someone went through the back door to clear at a cheaper cost and went to resell to ECG. So in this situation, are there structures that regulate the activities to make sure they are doing the right thing?
Okay, once you've mentioned ECG, I'll be open. So ECG is one of the recalcitrant agencies. Under the law, I think section 17 or so, you can apply to PPA to be exempt from the use of the procurement regime, okay? But that's application or exemption should be for a particular procurement. That's the essence. So if you are doing some procurement and maybe you are getting funding from somewhere and they have conditions, you can apply to PPA based on the information and say that we want exemption for the use of the country systems, and they will exempt you. So I think when the law started, ECG was able to make a case for some exemption of that nature. And after that, they went into switch off mode. So PE, look, years back, about 12 years back, my then board chair was on them to come under the application of the law. By ECGA, they are their own gods, and they have in fact, they have even formed their own, they call it Central Tender Committee or something. They have their own system that they operate with. And ECG has procured a lot of things that will last for years because they keep on, and they are doing their own things. And we are in a country whereby, I don't know how to say it, but when people have some gods protect them, they're able to get away with better. So ECG has been in the books of PPA and CTRC as a recalcitrant agency that's thing, but one day the law will catch up with them. And it started catching up with them. Because there's no way if they were passing through the procurement regime, they could have something that has been supplied and somebody has not cleared it, and he will still even be getting other supplies. So ECG is a basket case, trust me. But the other ones are VRA is fine, Gridco is fine. They come always, if they are purchasing vehicles, little things, they come, and it's fine. But ECG has put themselves in another bracket. They are doing their own things, and it's one of the state agencies that has been in debt for years. And for me, if you ask me, I will not appoint a CEO without giving KPIs when for years running down, they have incurred losses. 85% of state agencies have all incurred losses, and yet they are appointing CEOs. And when they go and sit there, they are able to travel, to do anything as if business is as usual. And at the end of the year, losses. Who runs a country like that? KPIs. Meet these targets. So you have your life in your own hands. If you're able to be the target and you want to give per diem this, I don't care, but make profit for the state. But they're all making losses. If you read the last CIGA report, 85% of them are all making losses. ECG is standing tall. So be interested in the business of the country. We all have to contribute to Mother Ghana. On this score, I'll beg to leave you.